Chapter 1. The Silver Disciple. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Translator. Nyo iwo Studio Editor. Nyo iwo Studio. A gleam of light pierced through the dark blue sky, gradually brightening up the horizon. Hoa, thump, thump, in a mountainous forest behind Xianyu Prefecture, a martial arts training institute, there was a thin young man wearing a loose and comfortable martial artist robe. In the lotus position with his tongue against his teeth, he focused all his strength into both his fists and pummeled a huge tree. His fist technique was delicate and skillful. He put up a strong fighting front with a burning fighting spirit. His fist technique had a certain level of maturity. The young man was named Suyu, 14 years old. Even though he was tall, well-refined and handsome, he gave others the impression he was a child. Below his soft, black hair, he had a pair of vast, glowing eyes that seemed to shine forever like the stars in the sky, displaying a wisdom that did not conform to his age. 3 hours later, the sun rose. Suyu then stopped practicing his fists. As he looked at his blood-stained fists, he sighed, even though I have trained twice as hard as the others, my progress is not even close to half of what the talented students have achieved. I wonder if it is a fortune or a misfortune for me to have come into this unusual world. 2 months ago, the plane that Suyu was on had an unfortunate accident. When he woke up, he found that he had transcended into a world known as the Xianyu continent. He later became the student of a certain martial arts training institute on the continent. It took him 2 full months before he was able to understand the memories of the body he was in. In the Xianyu continent, respect and honor was only given to those who practiced martial arts. Not only that, the weak ended up as the prey of the strong. Such was the harsh and cruel reality of the Xianyu continent. Humans honed their martial arts skills in order to reach the peak of perfection. By doing so, they were then able to transcend to the realm of the divine. In the martial path, there were 9 levels. Each level consisted of a total of 3 layers. The lower tier, the upper tier and the peak. It was said that by surpassing the 9 levels of the martial path and going beyond its limit, you would become a god as well as a mythological figure. You would then be known as the Holy King. The realm of the Holy King was the highest achievement of the martial path and hundreds of millions of humans strive to achieve it. It was rumored that the Holy King was omnipotent, able to move mountains and fill seas, ride the clouds and fly on the mist. The existence of the Holy King was equivalent to that of a god, just one of them alone was able to change the destiny of a dynasty for the next 100 years. However, why was the training so difficult in this world? Being under Xianyu Prefecture, Suyu was the genius of geniuses in the town of Qingshan. At the age of 14, he had already achieved level 1 peak of the martial path, becoming Qingshan's 1 in 100 years prodigy. However, when Suyu was recruited by a martial arts training institute which put martial arts above everything in the Xianyu Prefecture, he realized that his former self knew nothing about the world of martial arts. The Martial Arts Training Institute scouted around the Xianyu Prefecture for all the martial arts geniuses, and it only accepted new students once every year. However, among the geniuses in the Martial Arts Training Institute, Suyu was at the rock bottom. At the Martial Arts Training Institute, the students were split into 3 categories according to their levels of abilities. There were core students, geniuses who had achieved demon level in martial arts. When you compared them with the rest of the people in the huge and boundless Xianyu Prefecture, every single one of them was the best of the best and had the greatest chance to become the Holy King. Gold students were outstanding geniuses who were renowned and were the geniuses of geniuses in their cities. The Martial Arts Training Institute had given priority to these geniuses to be nurtured and cultivated. Silver students were geniuses who had potential. In small towns, they were considered gifted and were a cut above the others. By putting a bit more effort into training, they might still have hope. Suyu was one of those silver students. He understood that silver students actually had no hope in achieving the upper tier, but it would be a pity for them to give up their martial arts. In addition, even though their martial arts had little or no value, they were reluctant to part with it. Silver students were not regarded highly. Therefore, the resources that the training institute provided them were very limited. As a result, the possibility of a silver student achieving anything noteworthy was close to zero. Su Yu, return to the training institute immediately, Duke Qin wants to meet you. An urgent voice pierced through the silence of the mountainous forest, following a blue-shirt middle-aged man running up the mountain with signs of anxiousness on his face. Duke Qin. Su Yu was stunned for a moment. How fortunate was it for a commoner like him to have a meeting with Duke Qin? At that instant an image of someone with a gorgeous look flashed through his mind. As Su Yu started to understand the purpose of the meeting, he sneered. What are you still standing there for? How can you show no interest in a meeting with Duke Qin? Follow me. The impatient blue-shirt middle-aged man walked up to Su Yu. Without showing any concern for Su Yu's thin body, the middle-aged man grabbed Su Yu's shoulders with force and dragged him down the mountain. Su Yu clenched his teeth together, endured the shoulder pain and did not make any sound. The man was the training institute's attendant who was in charge of the students' daily activities. In Earth's terms, he was the director of student affairs. After drinking half a cup of tea. In the training institute there was a lounge. The lounge was so luxurious and graceful that it was almost like a dream. Only core students, the training institute's higher echelon of people, as well as influential officials were allowed access to the lounge. Other than that, the gold and silver students were denied access as they were deemed unworthy. This was the first time that Su Yu had entered the luxurious lounge. As a poor commoner, he was a bit nervous. However, in front of Su Yu was the world of well-established businesses, 5-star hotels, presidential suites and luxurious balls. A frequent visitor to the lounge would be serene and also remain indifferent no matter how someone treated him. In the lounge were 3 people, a young man and a young lady, as well as a dignified man who gave off the vibes of nobility. When Su Yu saw the 14-year-old young lady, his eyes froze for a moment. She was a girl who looked as pretty as a fairy, with a face so beautiful it was as though it had been delicately carved. She had an exquisite figure as well as pure white skin, so white it was as if it were the snow of spring. She was dressed in a pure white shirt, making her look as if she was a fox fairy. She was indeed beautiful. When she looked at Su Yu's eyes, her gaze was cold yet complicated. Beside her stood a 16-year-old young man. He was so handsome, mighty and dashing that no words could describe him. In stark contrast to the simple and plain martial artist robe that Su Yu was wearing, the 16-year-old young man was wearing a luxurious robe. He looked at Su Yu with contempt, with a dull expression in his eyes, implying a feeling of detest towards Su Yu. Lastly, the dignified and extraordinarily handsome man had a big and tall figure. When he stood still, he gave off an oppressive vibe to the people around him. You must be Su Yu, right? Ah, I am the Duke Qin, nice to meet you. Duke Qin was one of the 3 major dukes of the Fomlin Empire. At that moment, instead of being arrogant, he kindly invited Su Yu to take a seat with a smile. Su Yu shook his head half-heartedly, not even moved in the slightest bit. As they belonged to the upper echelon of the people, they were very self-conscious about their image and reputation since hundreds of millions of eyes were fixated on them. Just like the politicians on Earth, even though it was as clear as the sky that they were incompatible with one another, when they met they would shake hands and exchange greetings with one another with a smile. However, behind the scenes, they would backstab one another. I am Qin Feng's father, and I am here because of the matter between him and Jiang Xueqing. The handsome Duke Qin smiled. I have heard the story from Feng.er. As Feng's father, I would like to apologize to you. The pain and agony that Su Yu felt in his heart belonged to the remnant of the previous Su Yu's soul. The young lady in front was named Jiang Xueqing. She was a genius who came from Qingshan together with Su Yu. Both of them were recruited as students of the Martial Arts Training Institute at the same time. Both of them grew up as childhood friends and innocent playmates, causing them to develop feelings for one another over time. They were like a golden couple, created by heaven for one another. However, after entering the martial arts training institute, Jiang Xueqing, who came from the rural town of Qingshan, was shocked by the huge and prosperous world. Eventually, she became intoxicated by the luxurious lifestyle of the world. With her beautiful looks like a fox fairy, it was difficult to prevent influential youngsters of outstanding talents from pursuing her. Initially, she was still able to persuade herself to spend her first year with Su Yu. As she began to understand the harsh reality of the world, she eventually changed herself qualitatively from the naive little girl she was. She knew that it would be difficult for Su Yu to have a bright future. If she followed him, she would suffer hardships or even be reduced to a servant. Finally, the final line of defense in her heart was broken. 2 months ago, she ceased all kinds of contact with Su Yu and became the partner of junior Duke Qin Feng, son of Duke Qin. Although Jiang Xueqing adhered to her duty of being a good girl in the family, her relationship with Qin Feng did not go beyond that of a boy and girl. However, from that time onwards, both of them accompanied one another wherever they went and were inseparable from one another. Eventually they became the couple that everyone was envious of. As for Su Yu, he became the laughing stock of the martial arts training institute. Su Yu was deeply shocked. He begged Jiang Xueqing many times to change her mind, and even begged on his knees and lost all his dignity, but was rejected by Jiang Xueqing cold-heartedly. As Su Yu could not withstand the greatest shock of his life, he cast himself into the lake. Coincidentally, the plane that Earth's Su Yu was on met with an accident, causing his soul to transfer over to this sad and pitiful weakling. As Duke Qin watched Su Yu recall his past, he saw that Su Yu could not give up his friendship with Jiang Xueqing. He sighed, Feng.er is still young and Na.ve. I am willing to compensate you for his mistakes. You can ask for whatever you want. However, as his father, I hope you can give your blessings to Feng.er. He is really serious with Jiang Xueqing. As Su Yu listened to the words that seemed to come from the bottom of the Duke's heart, he shook his head in his mind. This small trick may fool ordinary people, but it was useless against him. Even after stealing my girlfriend, you still want me to give my blessings. How is this an apology? This is clearly using power to oppress me. Duke Qin looked as though he were a gentle man, but in reality, he was quick to humiliate those around him. One might ask, if it were a monarch's woman or an emperor's woman that his son had taken a fancy to, as a duke of the Qin dynasty, would he dare to ask the monarch to let Qin Feng have his woman? He wouldn't dare, as he could not afford to offend the monarch. He could only afford to offend commoners like Su Yu. Su Yu shook his head lightly. He then got up with a desire to leave. For a realistic girl like Jiang Xueqing, he did not harbor any forms of reluctance to leave. Even if Duke Qin did not threaten him, he did not intend to compete for her. As for the compensation by the Duke from the Qin dynasty, even though Su Yu lacked training resources, even though he was poor, even though he had nothing, he still had an indomitable will. He had not been reduced to the point that he had to depend on charity. If he had accepted the charity of Duke Qin today, he would have lost in this life. He would be unable to lift up his head in front of them. Jiang Xueqing knew Su Yu's personality, stubborn with a refusal to admit defeat. Seeing that Su Yu wanted to leave and refused to give up, she lightly bit her white and shiny teeth, took light and graceful steps, with snowy eyes like the moon in a cold and secluded mountain. Su Yu. Please respect my decision. Since our relationship has come to this, I will make it completely clear to you, and I hope you will give up. Jiang Xueqing's eyes were filled with coldness. Qin Feng is a junior duke, and he will become an assistant of the emperor in the future. Unlike a poor village boy like you, he is able to give me wealth and honor. Are you able to give me all of this? Qin Feng is well respected as a core student. When he strives to become the holy king in the future, standing on top of hundreds of millions of people, he is able to provide me with a sense of security. As a silver student, are you able to give me that? Suyu, please accept the reality. I do not deny the fact that you were once my love as well as the most dazzling genius in my mind. However, back then I was too young and na.ve. The real world is cruel, hence I have no other choices. The last bit of worry left Jiang Xueqing's eyes. Her gaze at Suyu gradually became distant, as though she were looking at a stranger. She sighed lightly. Qin Feng is a good person. As long as you promise not to look for me in the future, I will do my best to compensate you. I will give you a few spirit elixirs to promote the cultivation of your body. When your abilities have increased, your school life will become much better. As Jiang Xueqing thought to herself, she took a palm-sized crystal-carved statue of a woman from her sleeve. The crystal-carved statue was glittering and translucent, glimmering splendidly with a rich luster. The most beautiful thing about the statue was that it resembled a girl with ethereal beauty just like a fox fairy. The statue was as beautiful as an angel, to the point that people were mesmerized by it. The statue had the appearance of a lifelike woman. When compared to its owner Jiang Xueqing, who was holding it, they were similar and only one such statue existed. This is the present that you gave me when you pledged your love. Now, I will return it to you. From today on, we will not owe each other anything. Jiang Xueqing heartlessly placed the statue in the hands of Suyu, then turned around and returned to Qin Feng's side. She stopped looking at Suyu and instead started to look at the sky, without any regard for Suyu's feelings. Chapter 2. The Divine Nine-Dragon Cauldron. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Translator. Nyo-i.bo Studio Editor. Nyo-i.bo Studio. The crystal statue was personally crafted by Suyu, and it was given to Jiang Xueqing as a token of love. Every month, the institute would give each student 1 tael of silver. Suyu lived frugally, he did not dare to buy any new clothes or eat any good food. While other male students got together under the moon to drink alcohol, Suyu was saving up his money and refused to spend even a single penny. He used all the money that he had saved to buy crystal, carving it little by little in order to sculpt the beautiful Jiang Xueqing. During summer, when others were enjoying the cool air, he continued to carve the crystal statue even when he was perspiring non-stop. One time he suffered from heat stroke that caused him to become dizzy and had to rest in his dormitory. During winter, while others kept themselves warm with the heat from a stove, he held on to the icy cold crystal and continued to carve it, enduring the cold to the point that the skin on both his hands started to crack and bleed. Finally, after a year of hard work, he finished carving the most beautiful version of Jiang Xueqing he could picture. He remembered that Jiang Xueqing used to have very shiny eyes that were soft and brimming with excitement. However, 1 year later, the former friendship, the former love and how moving she once was all returned to him. Suyu hung his head low, looking at the beautiful crystal statue in his hands. It had a pair of bright eyes that seemed to shine forever like the stars in the sky. Not only was it not worthy of the real Suyu, it had also ridiculed him. In the older generation, there were many practical women. They would sleep with men who had money. He did not take a liking to Jiang Xueqing. Apart from her good looks, she did not have any good qualities. Since the love is gone, for whom do I pledge my love? This crystal statue has lost its meaning. Surprisingly, Suyu did not display any feelings of disappointment, grief, or anger. Instead, he was as calm as a late autumn lake that was free of waves. With a light swing of his hands, he threw the crystal statue on the ground. Crash! The ethereally beautiful statue of the girl was shattered instantaneously, leaving behind pieces of residual crystal, shaking the spotted memory of time. With this action, the last link between him and Jiang Xueqing disappeared. As he stretched his waist, Suyu revealed a smile of relief, as though a huge burden had been lifted off his chest. PFF, I can finally put myself at ease. I was worried that you still had feelings for me. If Jiang Xueqing still had feelings for Suyu, perhaps the remnants of his soul would continue to worry and be uneasy. She was very absolute. At the instant when she returned the token of love, the last bit of attachment Suyu felt had completely dissipated. Goodbye, my former Qing.er, my former love. As he waved his hands he gently sighed, as though he was conveying a message to the late Suyu, telling him that he could finally pass on peacefully. After which, he could finally relax and leave freely, never turning back ever again. To come and go like dust, disappearing in time and space. Suyu had passed away, leaving behind a completely new Suyu. Jiang Xueqing felt a quiver in her body, the words that seemed like a farewell had opened up her frozen heart. As she looked back, her eyes quickly followed Suyu's back. However, she could only see a fuzzy shadow disappearing into the crowd. At that instant, Jiang Xueqing's heart started to tremor. She felt as though she had lost something very precious to her, something that she could never find again. As she looked at the shattered statue, Jiang Xueqing was startled. After a long time, she finally recovered. Her eyes gradually became ruthless as she destroyed the last thread of love in her heart. I, Jiang Xueqing, am extremely beautiful. I am destined to be an extraordinary woman. How can you, Suyu, who lacks moral conduct and capability, be worthy of me? It is not I who dumped you. It is because you are incompetent. The choice that I, Jiang Xueqing, will definitely not be wrong. With an unemotional face, Jiang Xueqing left. As Qin Feng observed with unsympathetic eyes, he said with disdain, that guy, pretending to be free and at ease, trying to win the eyes of Qing.er. Humph, I don't think he has given up yet. In contrast to Qin Feng, Duke Qin gazed at Suyu's back as though there was a meaning behind it, and shook his head. I don't think so. That guy is not useless and good. For nothing like you said. He is calm and resilient, free and easy. With a bit of training, he might be able to become a talent. Then before he rises to the top, kill him. Qin Feng disliked anyone who had a relationship with his woman, especially if they were once lovers. All the more it was not allowed. Duke Qin shook his head. No. The monarch is nearing the end of his life, now is the time to compete for the throne. As I support the crown prince, the other princes now view me as a thorn in their flesh. They are looking everywhere for something to hold against me. You stole someone else's companion, giving off the impression that I am unable to teach my son well. This will easily become something they can use against me. As he mentioned this, Duke Qin displayed a bit of anger. When I am busy with numerous state affairs, why would I make a special trip down to Xianyu Prefecture to help to settle your issue? At this moment, if you kill Suyu, wouldn't it be the same as killing someone to steal their wife? As your father, I will be implicated as well. Duke Qin was very calm. So, you must stay put now. It is not too late to kill him after the conflict over the succession of the throne is settled. Qin Feng understood this, but he felt uncomfortable. Does this mean I can let him roam around freely in front me? Suyu is a thorn in my flesh, and he must be disposed of. Duke Qin waved his hands lightly. Even if we cannot kill him now, it does not mean that we cannot touch him. You do not need to worry about this matter now. As your father, I have many ways to drive Suyu out of the martial arts training institute, completely cutting off his path to success, sparing us from all trouble that he might give us in the future. After drinking a small cup of tea, the middle-aged man in the blue shirt submissively allowed Duke Qin to take his leave. I will leave this matter to Jiang Zhishe. Duke Qin secretly gave Jiang Zhishe a present to express his intention to forge a long-term relationship. Jiang Zhishe laughed, Duke, you do not need to worry. In 6 months' time, there will be an assessment by the Martial Arts Training Institute. Every year, half of the silver students will be expelled. With Suyu's lack of skills he is already on the list. If that is the case, then all is good. Relieved, Duke Qin left. As Qin Feng watched his father leave, an idea flashed through his mind. Humph, for him to be expelled without any problems would be giving him too much leeway. Even if I do not use my own hands to do it, wouldn't it be a piece of cake for others to do it? Qin Feng said cold-heartedly. There is still a thread of love in Qin daughter's heart. She must see Suyu in dire straits, so that she will understand that life will be difficult with him, completely giving up any thoughts of reuniting with him. Suyu returned to the mountainous forest and continued to train as if nothing had happened. However, the incident had greatly affected him and prevented him from concentrating on his training. As Suyu looked up at the vast sky, his fists were clenched. Even though the humiliation today belonged to the other Suyu, who knows if I will suffer the same humiliation? Suyu pondered. In a world where only the strong are respected, why is it that my abilities are so low? Even though I put in many times more effort than others, my progress is only half of the talented students. Looking up in the sky, Suyu was unwilling to accept his fate. He shouted, "Heaven is unfair. If heaven had given me greater abilities, I would put in 10 times the effort to train and become the Holy King, overseeing the human population." His loud voice was full of determination, and his refusal to accept his own fate traveled towards the heaven. Rumble suddenly, when Suyu looked up, he found that a black substance was falling from the sky. It came with a sound as loud as thunder, and it was falling towards his direction. "Screw you! I only shouted to the sky, why must this happen to me?" Bang! A graceful scream broke the silence of the mountainous forest. Suyu fainted on the spot, and it was unknown whether he was dead or alive. The night came. Ah! Pain, pain, pain. Suyu shook his arms and legs and took some time to come back to his senses. He covered his forehead, and his mouth was shaking. "Oh, my hand." Suyu was surprised. Even though it was night, he could see as well as if it were day, with his palm and fingers clearly visible. Moreover, 100 meters away he could clearly see a toad that was hiding under a rock, preparing to catch its prey. When he looked at a piece of reflective metal that he found on himself, he was amazed to find that the pupils on both his eyes had turned white just like two pure crystals, dazzling and gorgeous. Bewildered, Suyu stood up. "L.C. My body." He had a habit of jumping up from a laying down position, but the strength in his legs was beyond his expectations, causing him to lose control of his body, which almost caused him to fall down. After exploring for a bit, he found that his inner strength had doubled. His body seemed to have gone through earth-shaking changes. He was light and agile like a swallow, as though he had removed 20 kilograms worth of load from his body. "I have achieved level 2. Suyu was so amazed that he could not contain his happiness. He had been at level 1 peak for more than 6 months, yet he was unable to make a breakthrough to level 2. He didn't think that just a random hit on his head would allow him to make a breakthrough to level 2. Suyu's eyes showed signs of suspicion, and he decided to do a check on himself. He was amazed to find out that within his mind there was an additional thumb-sized bronze cauldron with 9 dragons carved on it. These 9 dragons were extremely lifelike, as if they were about to fly and disappear into the heavens the next moment. There was a remnant of a liquid which overflowed from the cauldron, and it gradually changed Suyu's body. Can it be that, just now, this mysterious small cauldron landed on me and then entered my consciousness? At the same time, that mysterious red liquid modified my body and removed the obstacle inside me, allowing me to make a breakthrough to level 2 of the martial path. Bewildered, Suyu tried to remove the small cauldron, but it wouldn't budge at all. After pondering for a long time, Suyu clenched his teeth. I do not know if this was a fortune or misfortune. But, with it, I was able to achieve level 2 and also gain an unusual pair of pupils. From now on, I will devote myself to training, so that I will not be eliminated in the assessment 6 months from now. As Suyu clenched his fist, he had a look of excitement. Looking up to the heavens, Suyu's eyes were filled with determination. He rejoiced in the forest. To the people who once treated me cold-heartedly, thank you for inspiring me, allowing me to learn to never yield to others, as well as giving me a more exciting life. With the darkness gone, the journey from the mountains back to the dormitory was easy. 2 silver students shared a dormitory. Adding to the fact that it was small and narrow, there was only one bed to rest on. It was said that for golden students, they had a private courtyard as well as servants. In the whole martial arts training institute, there were 10,000 silver students and 100 golden students. As for the rumored core students, who were said to have achieved demon level in their martial arts, there were only 10 of them. One can imagine how difficult it would be for a silver student to ever think of enjoying the comfortable environment in a private courtyard. Su Yu's dorm mate was a black-skinned and ill-tempered young man named Wusong. He had achieved level 2 lower tier of the martial path a few months ago. With him as a dorm mate, Su Yu was easily ordered around like a servant. He was so strong that Su Yu couldn't do anything to him. Combined with the fact that he did not treat Su Yu very badly, Su Yu could only submit to the humiliation. Get out. Sleep in the corridor tonight. The moment Su Yu opened the door, Wusong threw a swift and powerful kick at him, as though his right leg was the shadow of a whip. Unpredictable and in the darkness, like a ghost, it was difficult to guard against the kick. The good thing was that Su Yu's pupils had changed. To him, darkness was non-existent. He tiptoed a bit and exerted a force on his toes. Since his body was as light as a swallow, he jumped back about 1 meter. Russell Wusong kicked the air. His expression changed, indicating that he did not expect Su Yu to dodge the kick. What are you doing? Su Yu's eyes turned cold. The new Su Yu was pale in comparison to the past, and he was no longer a punching bag. He did not intend to submit to humiliation. After seeing you, I am not happy. Do you have anything to say? Get out. From now on, this dormitory belongs to me alone. You will go to the corridor and sleep. Wusong looked at him with cold eyes. How intelligent was Su Yu? He instantly realized that something was wrong. Even though his relationship with Wusong was poor, it was not to this extent. When he thought of what happened in the day, he sort of guessed the situation. Wusong had probably been bribed by Qin Feng. He did not hold back with the kick just now, he seriously intended to injure Su Yu. Having arrived at this conclusion, why would Su Yu hold back? Chapter 3. Space, Time Manipulation. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Translator. Nyo-i.bo Studio Editor. Nyo-i.bo Studio, screw you. Su Yu was normally calm. However, when angry, he was really angry. When he needed to fight, he would fight. If you endure something silently when you are not supposed to, that is not enduring, that is cowardice. Whatever happened in the corridor had attracted the attention of the other silver students, causing many of them to pop their heads out. Ha! Am I seeing things? Su Yu actually had the guts to go against Wusong, some people mocked. A few people leaned against the wall with their arms crossed to watch the show. Who knows? Maybe because his girlfriend was stolen from him he turned into a different person. Haha, interesting. I heard that bastard Su Yu even helps Wusong with his urinal pot in the middle of the night. Now, he dares to go against him. Wusong let out a cold laugh. Now that you've become more gutsy, you want to fight me. Su Yu ignored the mockery of the others and quickly made the first move. Continuous jade leaf kick. Su Yu moved quickly like a fleeing hare. With a force as great as a thunderbolt, he launched his attack. He stood on one leg and moved in an agile manner. As he moved, he raised his other leg. The attacking and withdrawing of his foot was very elastic and smooth, making it very difficult for Wusong to avoid them by confusing him. However, Wusong easily dodged the kick after retreating half a step. Drunken Mantis Fist. He squatted down a bit and became as sturdy as a rock. He bent his knees and filled with explosive force, ready to leap forward and launch an attack that could both harm the opponent and defend himself. He positioned his arms like a sickle and held his fingers close together. He rocked back and forth, and was firm like a mantis preying on a cicada. This allowed him to defend himself and prepare for the attack. Wusong's right arm moved as fast as lightning to block the kick before it hit him. As he heard the sound of his sleeve being torn open, his right arm went on the offensive. The right arm was aimed at the sole of Su Yu's shoes, repelling his kick. The onlookers shook their heads and sneered. "Are you an idiot? How can someone who is at level 1 peak beat someone who is level 2? Even if Su Yu had achieved level 2 by chance, he would be unable to match Wusong, who achieved level 2 a long time ago." However, Su Yu was not discouraged. He continuously launched fierce attacks using his legs. Wusong blocked his attack again, but with a bit more difficulty. He knew that the power of the next few attacks would give him a hard time. He started to feel pain in between his fingers. What was going on? How can a mere level 1 have such frightening strength? Both of them were tangled, continuously exchanging blows. Bang! The noise generated from the fight attracted more attention. What is going on? Su Yu actually lasted this long against Wusong. Is it because Wusong was holding back? Some onlookers eventually realized the situation and stopped mocking Su Yu. "I don't think so, Wusong seems to be having a hard time," a particularly perceptive onlooker observed. They were locked in battle and refused to yield to the other. At that moment, Su Yu was surprised to discover that Wusong seemed to have taken a drug that slowed him down. He was 30% slower than normal. What is going on? Su Yu was astonished. "I don't care anymore." When his opponent slowed down, Su Yu found there was an opening around his chin. Immediately, he launched a fierce attack with his right leg. Thump! Wusong took a heavy hit to his chin. His body felt as though he had experienced electrical shock, and was sent flying across the room. His back hit the edge of the bed, which was made of solid wood, causing excruciating pain that made him scream a few times. His forehead was dripping sweat. "You! How is it possible?" Wusong gasped with astonishment. As he was fighting, his opponent suddenly became 3 times faster and he threw a kick at him. "You have achieved level 2 of the martial path." When Wusong sensed the inner strength of his opponent, he concluded that the abnormal change was due to him making a breakthrough to level 2. The people surrounding Su Yu observed the power of his inner strength, causing them to gasp with astonishment. "What? This bastard! Su Yu actually reached level 2. One of the students who was at level 1 peak changed his tone as his heart quivered with fear. Among the silver students, Su Yu's talents were medium level. He was neither poor nor outstanding, he was average. Master Chen, who taught them, had assessed that Su Yu would need at least 2 more years of training before he would achieve level 2. The fact that Su Yu had already done so was an achievement that surprised many. For silver students, achieving level 2 indicated that they had surpassed a large number of students. Most of the students watching the show had only achieved level 1. When Su Yu sent Wusong flying with a kick, he caught the attention of the noisy onlookers. At the same time, the onlookers withdrew back into their rooms. Seriously? Su Yu has actually achieved level 2. Oh no. I bullied him once. Darn. This kid has kept his abilities hidden for so long. Looking at the way he defeated Wusong, he might have achieved level 2 a long time ago. He might have kept this a secret, so that he could lure out his bullies. I might already be on his radar. Heaven is blind. If he could achieve level 2 with his kind of talent, why couldn't I? The silver assessment is almost here. At that moment, everyone kept quiet out of fear. When Su Yu became a level 2 student, he had become an outstanding figure who was admired by the rest of the students. Those who had caused him trouble in the past were uneasy, as they were afraid that he might seek revenge. As Su Yu felt the difference between now and the past, he quietly sighed. This was indeed a world where you were honored and respected based on your abilities. His gaze then fell on Wusong, who was groaning in pain on the floor. Take your bed and get out. From now on, the corridor will be your home. Su Yu swung his arms and threw Wusong's bedding out of the room. He treated his enemies without any mercy. Wusong refused to accept this. However, he had suffered a minor injury, and combined with the extraordinary change in Su Yu, he could only grit his teeth, submit to humiliation, and move out. In the blink of an eye, Su Yu disappeared into the darkness. How was it? How did the plan go? Out of the darkness, Qin Feng's familiar voice could be heard. In a respectful and careful manner, Wusong said, "That guy achieved level 2 of the martial path, so I was unable to break his ribs. The plan was a failure. Achieved level 2. Him. That good. 4. Nothing." Astonished, Qin Feng muttered to himself for a while and swung his hands. "You can leave now. You are no longer of any use to me in this matter. I will look for people that are more powerful." Who? Wusong refused to accept this. If he had time to prepare, he was sure that he could defeat Su Yu. Qin Feng uttered sarcastically, "Chen Feng." What? Poisonous widow, Chen Feng. Wusong's expression of dissatisfaction suddenly turned into an expression full of fear. Chen Feng was a strong martial artist who had achieved the level 2 upper tier of the martial path. Among the silver students, she was in the top 100. She excelled in poisoning techniques, making it difficult to get within 3 inches of her. This also meant that it was difficult to go against her. In a duel, whoever faced her as an opponent would experience many difficulties. What was frightening about her was that even though she was a girl, she was cruel and ruthless. She would always launch ruthless attacks. None of her opponents escaped unscathed. Puking blood and getting your limbs broken were considered minor injuries when fighting against her. Her poisoning techniques were top-notch. Many people were unaware that they had been poisoned, and it was too late for them by the time the poison took effect. There was once a pretty female student that Chen Feng was jealous of. During an official duel, they happened to face one another. As the other student's abilities were slightly superior, she won the duel. At the time, there was nothing wrong. However, 1 month later, the poison concealed in the student's body started to take effect, causing ulcers to form on her face. Moreover, there was no cure for it. Dejected, she withdrew from school in the end. Even though her family elders managed to find a remedy which helped her regain her appearance, she had missed her opportunity to be recruited by the Martial Arts Training Institute, ruining her future. Within the Training Institute, many silver students possessed indescribable hatred for her, yet no one dared to take revenge against her, because Chen Feng's brother was Chen Tiannan. Chen Tiannan's abilities were so frightening that he was comparable to gold students. None of the silver students could match him. Hence, he was fully deserving of the number 1 title among them. The number 1 silver student would earn a title that was exclusive to him alone. The King of Silver. This honor meant that he was the king among the silver students, as well as the most powerful person in the training institute. Similar to Chen Feng, Chen Tiannan's flaw was that he was ruthless. Who still dared to seek revenge against Chen Feng? Thinking about the existence of scary people such as the King of Silver, Wusong's face turned pale. If Su Yu met her. Wusong shivered with fear. He felt remorse for Su Yu. No matter the outcome of their battle, there would be dire consequences. The next morning, Su Yu felt slightly tired. He had been filled with excitement the entire night. The small bronze cauldron had changed his life, giving him a chance to rise to the top. He spent the whole night thinking about the change in himself. He set the small bronze cauldron aside, it was entrenched in Su Yu's mind and it wouldn't budge a bit. The greatest change in Su Yu was in his eyes. The hidden crystalline pupils not only gave him the ability to see in the dark, they also gave him the unusual ability to increase his speed. For the people of the Shenhua continent, this might be hard to understand. Suyu possessed great knowledge about science, allowing him to understand the principle which allowed him to increase his speed, space-time manipulation. By situating himself in a space which allowed time to accelerate, Wu Song would feel that Suyu was 30% faster. Knowing that he possessed an ability that defied nature, Suyu was unable to sleep for the whole night. This meant that if his opponent's abilities were only slightly greater than his, he would still have a chance at victory. In regard to his new abilities, Suyu did not become arrogant or complacent, his abilities were still too weak. For him to achieve a breakthrough to level 2 the previous night and then defeat Wu Song thereafter was largely due to his persistent training, which had allowed him to build a solid foundation. However, his enemy was not Wu Song. It was Qin Feng, the gold student who was way above the rest, as well as the son of the powerful and influential Duke Qin. In order to get stronger, not only must I train to a higher level, my cultivation technique is also important. Tomorrow, I will choose one. After dawn, Suyu immediately rushed to the depository of Buddhist scriptures, which was inside the Martial Arts Training Institute. With a student identification card, you could access the training institute. However, silver students were only qualified to enter the first level. The second and third levels were still above it. For the second level, only the gold students were qualified to enter. For the third level, only the 10 demon students who never showed themselves were allowed to enter. Although Suyu was envious of the 2 levels above, he was not qualified for either of them. Hence, he could only enter the first level. There are 101 assault cultivation techniques and 1001 auxiliary cultivation techniques. You can learn one at a time and you cannot learn another one for 6 months, advised an old man who was stationed in front of the staircase. He looked at Suyu indifferently. When the students started to practice their cultivation technique, they did not have a firm resolve. When they did not see the strength of the cultivation technique after training for some time, they would change and learn another one. As such, they wasted a huge amount of time and energy, only to achieve nothing in the end. It was estimated that results would only show after 6 months of training. Students would have to consider their choice of cultivation technique carefully to avoid picking the wrong one and regretting the next 6 months. Second, after the students made their choice, they needed to possess determination to train and master the technique. Suyu thought it was a pity that he could only learn one cultivation technique in the next 6 months. The cultivation techniques were categorized into 3 levels. Basic level, medium level, and advanced level. Continuous Jade Leaf Kick was considered basic level. Moreover, among the basic cultivation techniques, Continuous Jade Leaf Kick was fundamentally the easiest to train and master. As Suyu's abilities were not great in the past, he started off his training late. Hence, he deliberately chose a cultivation technique that was easy to train and absorb. Chapter 4. Universal Stroke. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Translator. Nyo-i.bo Studio Editor. Nyo-i.bo Studio. The cultivation technique that earned him a place in the training institute would not be enough for him to pass the assessment 6 months later. Suyu needed to learn a more powerful cultivation technique. The first level of the depository of Buddhist scriptures only consisted of basic level cultivation techniques. However, they could be classified as weak or strong. Apart from the power of the cultivation technique, the practitioner also needed to figure out whether the cultivation technique was compatible with himself, and whether he could fully unleash the power of it. For example, if a student excelled in leg techniques in general, a new leg technique would become very powerful after training. In contrast, for a student who had never practiced any form of leg techniques, a new leg technique he learned would only be average after training. As such, Suyu was not looking for a new and powerful cultivation technique, he was looking for one that complemented the current cultivation techniques he possessed. Suyu knew basic leg techniques and had a certain level of maturity in palm techniques. There were many cultivation techniques that he could choose from. Universal Stroke. Suyu found a book about the basic level cultivation technique. It was one which mixed a combination of fist and leg techniques. It was more powerful and difficult to master compared to continuous jade leaf kick. Among the many basic level cultivation techniques, universal stroke was one of the most powerful. If it had to be classified, it would be considered the top cultivation technique of the basic level. With great focus, Suyu read the book. Yellow springs refer to the earth. Green void refers to the heaven. Green void yellow springs means encompassing all of heaven and earth. This cultivation technique is a combination of fist and leg techniques staggered between one another. This is an airtight attack which is difficult to avoid. It is very powerful, meaning that no matter where you run, it is impossible to escape. There are basic requirements to learn this cultivation technique. The practitioner must be agile, have a certain level of maturity in both fist and leg techniques and have good coordination. In addition, he must be calm like the fallen dazzling leaves and move with the force of a thunderbolt. There are also core requirements to learn this cultivation technique. The practitioner must possess good eyesight, be able to sense the energy of all beings on earth and be able to control his each and every movement. Otherwise, it would be meaningless to practice this cultivation technique. Practice this cultivation technique wisely. Currently, not even 1 in 1,000 people have been able to master this cultivation technique. Suyu's eyes were burning with fighting spirit. It was as if this cultivation technique was made for him. As universal stroke was a very powerful cultivation technique, and many people desired to master it. These people might have met the basic requirements, but it was difficult for them to satisfy the core requirements. Regarding good eyesight, Suyu's pupils were able to perceive a distance of about 100 meters away. He could see the leg of an ant as though he was looking at it up close. Great! I will practice this cultivation technique. Suyu was delighted. When the old man saw universal stroke, he lightly shook his head. Young man, do not be ambitious. Choosing a suitable cultivation technique for yourself is the key to success. The power of the cultivation technique is secondary. Suyu bowed and expressed his gratitude. Thank you for your advice. Although the old man was cold-hearted, every word he said was constructive and he deserved to be thanked. After considering for a moment, Suyu decided to temporarily put down the book about universal stroke. As one could only enter the depository of Buddhist scriptures once every 6 months, how could he resist taking a closer look? After looking at more than half of the 101 assault cultivation techniques, he found that none of them were to his liking, as they were far less suited to him when compared to universal stroke. Suddenly, when he came upon the book of the last of the cultivation techniques, his eyes shone. The secret book of 100 feet piercing arrow. This is a weapon suitable for a bowman. The power of this technique is dependent on the bowman's ability, his arm strength and accuracy. The weapon's power will be different depending on how a person uses it. For the basic requirements, the practitioner must possess very good eyesight, being able to clearly see an insect at least 50 meters away. If this cannot be done, the practitioner should give up practicing this. If not, he will end up wasting his time and energy. Suyu was moved. His eyes were clearly able to see the leg of an ant that was 100 meters away, and this was way above the basic requirement of 100 feet piercing arrow. He restrained his desire to take the book and continued to look at others. After skimming through the other 108 assault cultivation techniques, only universal stroke and the secret book of 100 feet piercing arrow appealed to him. He was in no rush to leave, so he patiently continued to look at the auxiliary cultivation techniques. Within the 1001 auxiliary cultivation techniques, there were many different types. There were frightening poisoning techniques, alchemy, stratagem techniques, paper talisman techniques. As Suyu was skilled in those auxiliary cultivation techniques, they did not interest him. Suddenly, he found a book of a light-body cultivation technique named Cloud Shadow, and it was defensive in nature. This cultivation technique is suitable for someone with powerful insight. This book is difficult to understand, please choose carefully. For this cultivation technique, when stage 1 is achieved, the practitioner's speed will be as fast as sound. When stage 2 is achieved, the practitioner's speed will be as fast as someone from a higher realm. When stage 3, the peak, is achieved, the practitioner's speed will greatly surpass anyone from the higher realm. The basic requirement of learning this cultivation technique is having very powerful insight. As of now, not even 1 in 10,000 people have mastered this cultivation technique. Please consider carefully. Su Yu's eyes were burning with fighting spirit. If not even 1 in 10,000 people mastered this cultivation technique, it meant that in the entire martial arts training institute, there was a possibility that no one had ever mastered it. Su Yu was also mesmerized by the technique's power. If he succeeded in mastering it, combined with 100-feet piercing arrow, his ability to attack from a distance would be considerably strengthened. However, it was a pity that he could only borrow 1 book. As Su Yu did not want to return to Universal Stroke, he started to flip through the books. He thought to himself, is it possible to memorize the whole book of one cultivation technique and then borrow another? In his previous life, his memory was quite good. Although he did not have a photographic memory, 1 hour was more than enough for him to remember 3,000 words. When he roughly added up the total number of words in Universal Stroke, he became discouraged. There were at least 30,000 words, meaning he would need 10 hours to remember all of it. Moreover, it was obvious that the depository of Buddhist scriptures would not allow students to stay for a full 10 hours. As Su Yu flipped through the book, he found himself in a wonderful realm. He found that the old man next to him was completely still, not moving at all. The air also seemed to be at a standstill. By coincidence, a student had come in at the same time. He was doing high knees and froze in his position. Space-time manipulation. Su Yu was surprised, and he instantly thought about his ability. While he was reading the book, his pupils activated the ability on their own and caused him to enter a space where time was moving faster. To him, 10 hours had passed. To others, only 1 hour had passed. This had been different when he fought against Wusong. When the world within him was in an excited state, time would flow 30% faster. When his inner mind was at a calm and peaceful state, such as when he was reading, time would flow 10 times faster. Su Yu was delighted. He immediately started to read the book with great concentration. After 10 hours, Su Yu's face turned pale. Having memorized 30,000 words, he was incredibly exhausted. However, his expression was full of happiness as all the content of Universal Stroke was in his mind. Moreover, only 1 hour had passed in the actual world. The old man was surprised. Su Yu had been looking at the same book for 1 full hour. Can it be that he is trying to memorize the whole book? Unless he had photographic memory, it would be impossible. After that, Su Yu followed his previous pattern and spent another 10 hours memorizing the secret book of 100-feet piercing arrow. In the end, he borrowed Cloud Shadow. Having memorized the books of the 2 cultivation techniques, he was incredibly exhausted. For Su Yu, 3 cultivation techniques was his limit. The old man was stunned. "Kid, I have told you again and again, avoid biting off more than you can chew, yet you don't listen to me. There have been many people who strive for Cloud Shadow, but only a few people have successfully mastered it. After 6 months of learning nothing, let's see what happens to you." The old man was displeased. He said indifferently, "Remember, you are not allowed to go around teaching others the cultivation techniques that you have learnt in the depository of Buddhist scriptures. As soon as someone catches you doing it, you will be expelled from the training institute." "I understand." When he returned to the dormitory, Wusong was lazily lying in the corridor, enduring the humiliation with composure as people stared at him. Seeing that Su Yu had returned, Wusong's expressions changed to one of aggravation. "This place is indeed suited for you," Su Yu grinned to himself and paid no more attention to Wusong. Wusong remained calm and laughed at the misfortune that would befall Su Yu. "You will not be able to stay long. In the end, the dormitory will belong to me alone." Su Yu's eyebrows started to twitch. After Su Yu entered his dormitory, he found a black envelope on the table. Brother Su, I heard that you have achieved level 2 and that your abilities have improved greatly. Please have a duel with me to allow both of us to learn from one another. In 7 days' time, at the Training Institute's Silver Arena, I would like to have a duel with you, Chen Feng. An image of Chen Feng's smiley face floated in Su Yu's mind immediately. Su Yu had heard about Chen Feng's reputation. Not only was she ruthless, her poisoning techniques were strange and incomprehensible. There had already been a few students who had been crippled by her in their battles. This must be Chen Feng again. Su Yu's mind was like a clear mirror. He had never met Chen Feng before, why did she want to have a duel with him? Su Yu's eyebrows wrinkled and his heart felt heavy. If this were a normal match, he would have paid no attention to it. 7 days later, in the arena, was an event held once every 6 months in the Qiafeng Training Institute. If the challenger were of the same level as the challenged student would be unable to decline the duel. Su Yu had achieved level 2 lower tier of the martial path while Chen Feng had achieved level 2 upper tier. Since both their martial paths were at the same level, Su Yu was unable to decline the duel. If he declined, he would face disciplinary action, where he would be demoted and expelled. Chen Feng was watching Su Yu's actions. He was eagerly waiting for Su Yu to decline the duel, so that he could find an excuse to get Su Yu expelled. Haha, you should give up. Chen Feng is not an opponent that you can compete on equal terms, considering you only achieved level 2 not long ago, said Wu Song as he laughed at the misfortune that would befall Su Yu. Su Yu kept his cool and went to the mountainous forest. I have no guarantee that I will be able to achieve the realm of level 2 upper tier in 7 days. If there was anything that could increase my abilities, that would be the 3 cultivation techniques. Firstly, Universal Stroke, a mixed combination of fist and leg techniques. This technique did not require many comprehensive skills, it was more focused on fundamentals. The practitioner needed a certain level of maturity in fist and leg techniques and must possess an agile body. Most importantly, they needed to have excellent eyesight. Su Yu possessed all of these. Unbeknownst to others, Su Yu began to train in the open and spacious mountainous forest. 2 days passed. Crack, a punch and a kick, staggered like a shadow and landed on the same spot of the tree. Su Yu's blows landed on the exact same spot with an accuracy that was incredibly high. The interval between the landing of the punch and kick were less than half a second. Su Yu's face was filled with excitement. In his previous life, Su Yu's abilities were average. However, he did not stop training. He continued to train every day, causing his body to become very strong. Combined with his crystalline pupils, it was only a matter of time before he would be able to master the technique. In a very short time, Su Yu managed to achieve stage 1 of Universal Stroke. In stage 1, the fist and leg would strike the same spot at the same time with a strong explosive power. Combined with the power of the cultivation technique itself, this was sufficient to win against most of the students who had achieved level 2 lower tier of the martial path. However, this was still not enough. Su Yu wanted to defeat someone who had achieved level 2 upper tier of the martial path. Moreover, her abilities were strange and incomprehensible, making it difficult to avoid her. With great focus, Su Yu continued to train. 3 days passed. There were only 2 days remaining before the duel in the Training Institute's arena. The right punch landed on a certain spot of the tree, and immediately after that his leg moved as fast as lightning to land a fierce blow on the same spot. The technique was vigorous and full of explosive power. However, this was still not enough. Su Yu's left leg followed suit immediately after that and continued to attack the same spot. His left fist then proceeded to attack the same spot fiercely. He continuously attacked the same spot with both his fists and legs. Every blow was fierce and consisted of frightening explosive power. This cultivation technique consisted of 4 layers of attack, with every layer of attack being airtight, as though it came from every direction and was impossible to avoid. This was the essence of universal stroke. Chapter 5. Gold and Silver. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Translator. Nyo-i.bo Studio Editor. Nyo-i.bo Studio. After 5 days of training, relying on his good eyesight and body foundation, Suyu finally achieved Stage 2. He was only a step away from achieving Stage 3, the peak of universal stroke. At Stage 3, the power of universal stroke was even more swift and fierce. It was said that if the practitioner achieved upper tier, their fist and leg attacks would be continuous, oppressing the opponent and not giving them a chance to counterattack. However, Suyu felt that his level of maturity was not nearly enough to achieve Stage 3 in universal stroke. He decided to temporarily stop training. As Suyu did not have any arrows with him, he could not practice Secret Book of 100-foot piercing arrow. As such, he was only left with Shadow Cloud, which he was looking forward to. He flipped open the book and started to read carefully. At that moment, Suyu became worried. After he had read hundreds of words, he felt dizzy. He did not understand the book's content, causing his head to spin. PFF. This cultivation technique is so hard to understand, that's why it requires such powerful insight. Seems like mine is not powerful enough. Suyu discovered a hard truth. However, he was persistent and would not give up on what he decided. I don't believe that I can't understand this book. Suyu rubbed his palm against his sleeves, and fixed his eyes upon the book. His distinct crystalline pupils appeared. For 2 hours, Suyu was as still as a rock. Suddenly, he fell down on the ground and fell asleep. Without realizing, he activated the abilities of his crystalline pupils. Even though 2 hours had passed in the actual world, he had been trying to understand the book for a full 20 hours. His mind was exhausted, and he finally fell asleep. After 1 hour, he flipped his body back up smartly and continued to read the book of the cultivation technique with great concentration, causing him to enter the time-accelerated space. After 2 hours, he fell asleep again. An hour later, he got up and continued reading the book. He repeated this process for 2 whole days. Taking away the time he used to sleep and rest, he had been trying to understand the book for 320 hours. He did not eat or drink, did not sleep or rest, for a total of 13 full days. At this point, Suyu's eyes turned bloodshot and his head was spinning. However, his face wore a silly smile. I have succeeded. Although he had only understood the process of attaining Stage 1, it was considered successful. Suyu laughed. His insight was not very powerful, it could only be considered above average. However, due to his diligence, he managed to succeed in understanding the book. Suyu bent his knees and exerted force on his legs. His body was like a swallow soaring in the sky, with a stride of around 2 meters. His body was as light as a swan goose feather, floating lightly within the forest. His silhouette was like the wind, jumping gracefully in the forest, as though he had the shadow of the white clouds, drifting away quickly and freely like nature. It was also as if he was floating gracefully like a duckweed, capturing the attention of those who caught a glimpse at him as he drifted along the direction of the waves. A young lady wearing a purple shirt was amazed. Hey, young princess, look at that handsome movement technique. From his speed alone, he should have achieved at least level 2 upper tier. Beside her was a girl who wore a light yellow dress and had a thin, delicate figure. She was petite and dainty, with big, round eyes that made her look adorable. She had an exquisite face, looking as though it had been carefully carved. Her skin was as white as snow, resembling a porcelain doll. After hearing what the young lady said, the beautiful lady opened up her eyes big and looked around. However, she did not see anyone. The beautiful lady suddenly stared at the lady wearing the purple shirt. Humph. Cut the crap, let's quickly enter the mountain, kill the beasts and sell them for money, buy spirit elixir to raise our inner strength which will then strengthen our body. Stupid father, he had frozen all my money, causing me to take the risk and enter the mountainous forest. I am going to go on a hunger strike, the beautiful lady complained angrily. The lady wearing the purple shirt laughed, turned around and rushed towards a 15 or 16-year-old bodyguard who had been following them and instructed him, Li Minghai, please take note to protect the young princess from any threats. Understood, the young man answered excitedly. When his eyes swept across the beautiful lady's back, they hid a burning passion. The beautiful lady turned around and glared at him, replying with disdain, protect me. You. Humph, I only brought you here to help me carry the prey. I do not need anyone to protect me. As the Martial Arts Training Institute only holds duels in the arena once every 6 months, it attracted a lot of attention. It was like the monthly examinations in schools on Earth. There were 100 students sporadically waiting at the side of the arena. They were students who were participating in the duel. Some of them had been issued a challenge by the challenger, while some of them had issued challenges to the others. Who is Su Yu? A sweet and charming voice echoed among the crowd. Su Yu tilted his head. An ugly-looking young lady around 15 years of age, wearing a loose and comfortable black shirt, with disheveled hair and her face full of pimples, was glancing left and right, looking for Su Yu. In that area, the crowd automatically separated for her. The crowd was fearful of her but detested her at the same time. You were the one who issued me a challenge. Chen Feng. Su Yu did not cower in fear. Anything that came his way, he would have to face sooner or later. The black-shirt young lady was indeed Chen Feng. Her bright eyes fell on Su Yu. As she came closer, her eyes seemed to be filled with charm. She looked up and down, nodded her head with a slight laughter and commended, not bad, handsome and delicate, you are to big sister's liking. It is a pity that I am not interested in that face of yours which says, I'm sorry, to the crowd. Su Yu crossed his arms and stood up. Even though he was secretly defending himself against being poisoned by Chen Feng, he was still rude to her. Since she was his enemy, why should he be polite? Hey, look at that kid, is he looking to die? Chen Feng hates anyone who calls her ugly. Shoo, keep it soft. Chen Feng is narrow-minded. The pretty female senior who was disfigured last year secretly called Chen Feng ugly. Hence, she was issued a challenge by Chen Feng and was secretly poisoned. The frightening part about Chen Feng is that her poisoning techniques were strange, you would not realize that you had been poisoned. When the poison starts to take effect later on, the institute is unable to catch her red-handed. As such, up until today, she still remains at large. This kid Su Yu doesn't ring a bell. However, he probably secretly called her ugly and she found out. Now, he is going to suffer. At this moment, a white-bearded referee slowly walked into the arena, and declared emphatically, begin the duel. Chen Feng showed no signs of anger but instead she smiled even more. No matter how one looked at her smile, it looked evil when combined with her toad-like face. Little boy, big sister will treat you nicely later. Every word she said sounded cold and vicious. It is still unknown who the winner will be. Su Yu said cold-heartedly. First round, gold student, Li Mingho, versus silver student, Su Senior. Li Mingho had achieved level 3 lower tier of the martial path. Su Sen had also achieved level 3 lower tier of the martial path. Li Mingho was a student in the same batch as Su Yu when he was recruited. After being in the training institute for 1 year, he achieved level 3 of the martial path. As for Su Sen, he belonged to the previous batch of older silver students. He only managed to achieve level 3 of the martial path after 2 years. Moreover, among the silver students, Su Sen's abilities were above average. This was the gap between gold and silver students, it was also the difference between their talents. Su Sen, you have the guts to challenge me. Li Mingho crossed his arms and stood up, looking at Su Sen scornfully. Su Sen stared at Li Mingho with reddish eyes and had an expression of hatred. He gnashed his teeth and said, Li Mingho. Both of us cannot exist together. Qian.er and I are childhood sweethearts who grew up together. However, you forcefully robbed her from me. If I don't take my revenge today, then I am not a man. Su Sen was a bit agitated to the point that he said this out loud as though the crowd was non-existent. Beneath the stage, Su Yu's heart was slightly moved. He had a similar experience to Su Sr. Li Mingho laughed loud. You're speaking of Li Qian, that little lady. Haha, she threw herself at me, why do I need to forcefully snatch her away? Although I had had enough fun and dumped her, I must say that she was not too bad and gave me a good time. Even though Li Mingho was only 15 years old, as the son of a prestigious family, he found it easy to play with women. If you wanted to blame someone, blame it on your own inability to capture the heart of the lady you like. Li Mingho laughed coldly. It is still not too late for you to take back that trash now. Maybe she would have a change of heart, haha. I will kill you. Su Sen's inner strength rose to its maximum, and he had lost any form of reasoning. Swift horizontal knife. Su Sen roared loudly. His inner strength was like a rainbow, fierce and astonishing. He took out a black horse-slaying knife, held it firmly and plunged towards Li Mingho's neck. The execution of his moves was astonishing, fast like a startled swan. As Su Yu watched the match, his heart was racing. If he were the one facing Su Sen's knife, he would have no chance of surviving. Li Mingho sneered, heartless fallen petals. His palms were so swift and tactful like the shadow of a beautiful snake, floating and twisting its body. He was as fast as lightning, and his speed was superior to the horse-slaying knife. A layer of shadow flickered. Li Mingho's palms were wrapped around the back of Su Sen's knife, and they continued to wriggle upwards. Immediately after that, Li Mingho's 5 fingers came together to form a crane mouth and ruthlessly pecked at Su Sen's wrist. When Su Sen felt the pain, the horse-slaying knife dropped from his hand. Given this opportunity, Li Mingho casually stretched his palm forward and jabbed Su Sen in his chest. As though he got an electric shock, Su Sen screamed loudly and was sent flying backwards. As he flew, he spit out a pool of blood and fainted on the spot. Su Yu's pupils shrunk. He is so strong. Even though both of them had achieved level 3 of the martial path, Su Sen is unable to block a single move of Li Mingho. Su Yu was stunned. One side of the arena was full of shocked silver students. Among the silver students, Su Sen is ranked number 3. Even though he is this strong, he still suffered a crushing defeat. This was the difference between gold and silver students. Not only was there a big difference in their talents, the difference in power between their cultivation techniques was great as well. Heartless fallen petals belonged to medium-level cultivation techniques while swift horizontal knife belonged to basic level cultivation techniques. When compared, the difference in power between them was huge. Li Mingho walked down the stage, relaxed. As he walked past Su Sen, he took out his student number plate. Every student had a number plate that was used as a form of identification in the Martial Arts Training Institute. Li Mingho's student number plate was light gold in color. As for Su Yu, his student number plate had a dim and silvery gray color. At that moment, Su Sen's silvery white student number plate in his chest glowed dimly for a few minutes. A ray of silver light then flew into Li Mingho's number plate, and the light gold color became slightly brighter for a minute. Upon seeing that, Li Mingho spit at Su Sen's face with disdain. Only this much martial art energy. What a waste of my time. Martial art energy was what the Martial Arts Training Institute used to measure the student's standard of ability. With the least amount of martial arts energy like Su Yu, the student number plate would have a dim and silvery gray color, meaning that his ability was one of the lowest. With the most amount of martial arts energy, such as Li Mingho, the student number plate will be light gold in color. Apart from duels and the student's cultivation base, a comprehensive consideration of the student's ability could also affect the color of their number plate. The only way for a silver student to become a gold student was to fight continuously and seize their opponent's martial arts energy to become stronger. There would come a day where the martial arts energy reached its maximum. At this stage, the student number plate would change into that of gold students, meaning the student would officially become a gold student. From then on, if a gold student wished to have special resources for training, the Martial Arts Training Institute would open their doors to them. All the silver students wished to become gold students, becoming a gold student was their target. The crowd saw Li Mingho off with respect, and they did not dare to breathe heavily. A few more matches followed, but none of them involved any gold students. 10th round, silver student, Chen Feng, versus silver student, Zheng Tao. Su Yu's face turned to that of fear. It was an opportunity for him to observe Chen Feng.bnol.m. Chapter 6. The Fight That Made Him Famous. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Translator. Nyo.bo Studio Editor. Nyo.bo Studio, Zheng Tao. Haha, I know, he is wooing the pretty female senior who was disfigured. Most likely, he secretly complained about Chen Feng, and she found out and issued him a challenge. Among the silver students, Zheng Tao was in the top 100. He ranked about 98. Seeing that he was ranked slightly below Chen Feng, the outcome should not be that awful since he had also achieved level 2 upper tier. His abilities should not be that low. Begin the duel, the referee declared emphatically. Not only was Zheng Tao frightened, he also hated Chen Feng. He bit his teeth and roared lightly, "Dragon drill." Zheng Tao's right leg exerted a great force, and he was like a big bird soaring in the sky. His left leg turned into a drill and from the sky, he headed towards Chen Feng. Chen Feng laughed coldly and jumped backwards. Zheng Tao's leg kicked the air. When both his feet landed on the ground, he continued his attack once again. Suddenly, Zheng Tao started to foam at the mouth and his body started to twitch. His face had a ruddy color and it quickly turned pale. His body turned stiff, and he became unable to move. Using this opportunity, Chen Feng closed in on Zheng Tao with a vicious smile on her face. On her delicate right hand, she revealed 5 sharp nails, turned them into a ghostly claw and ruthlessly pierced the flesh of Zheng Tao's face. After that, she sneered, streaked across the flesh vigorously and gorged out a piece, splashed with blood. Ah, my face! There were 5 bloody grooves that were so deep the bone was almost visible. Every bloody groove was hideous and shaped like a centipede. The audience gasped. Zheng Tao is done for. The fingernails were coated with poison. Unless Zheng Tao manages to find a cure, he will follow the footsteps of the female senior and withdraw from the institute. Chen Feng is so strange. I still don't understand how Zheng Tao lost. As Su Yu watched, his eyes turned cold. What a sinister woman. The referee frowned. According to the rules, the students could not kill one another. As Chen Feng had only injured her opponent and not killed him, swimming along the edge of the rules, the referee could not do anything to her. The referee looked at Chen Feng with detest and suddenly declared, Zheng Tao has lost. A strand of dim and silvery white color came out of Zheng Tao's student number plate and went into Chen Feng's number plate. Her student number plate had a pure silvery color free of any impurity. When compared to Su Se, it was slightly less superior than his magnificent silvery white color. Among the students who had achieved level 2, her student number plate was the brightest because she had participated in duels regularly and had lost very few of them. Another few rounds of duels were completed. Compared to Chen Feng's duel, none of them reeked of blood or were as cruel. Last round, silver student, Chen Feng, versus silver student, Su Yu. The audience was in awe. Sadly, it's another unlucky guy. If I were him, I would go on stage and admit defeat immediately. Since he will lose anyway, why does he still want to suffer at the hands of Chen Feng? Su Yu went on to the stage indifferently. Chen Feng laughed, Big sister has said before that I would treat you nicely. Cut the crap, Su Yu said coldly. Humph. Chen Feng groaned coldly and leaped towards Su Yu. A layer of thin, gray smoke was wrapped within 3 inches of her and was clad in poison, making it impossible to touch her body. Datura dance. Chen Feng's body was revolving like wind, allowing her to close in quickly on Su Yu. Su Yu was not scared of her. Instead, he faced her brazenly. Idiot! You can't get close to her. Chen Feng's body is full of poisonous mist. Beneath the stage, some audience members scolded him, saying he was silly. Chen Feng smirked. Chen Feng moved backward and stopped the attack, leaving behind a large empty space. What a foolish little brother. Have you still not realized how Jing Tao was poisoned? Chen Feng's mouth was filled with evil mockery. That face of yours, big sister will treat it nicely. Hiss, I understand now. The bottom of Chen Feng's feet were laced with a layer of poisonous substance. The spots that she had stepped on before generated poisonous gas. If an ignorant person stepped on it, he would be poisoned immediately, causing him to foam at the mouth and his body to twitch. That person would then be at the mercy of Chen Feng. Although Su Yu understood her trick, it was too late. He stepped onto the spot that Chen Feng had stepped on before, and the poisonous gas quickly surrounded him. However, it was strange. Su Yu did not show any symptoms of being poisoned. Instead, his lips carried a cool smile. His silhouette was like the wind, drifting away like the shadow of a cloud. He was also agile like duckweed, dodging and sweeping past the obstacles. He got within 10 feet of Chen Feng. The audience was surprised. How is it that he is not poisoned? Heavens, what movement technique is that? He was agile and elegant, as though he was taking a stroll. Even though he has just achieved the realm of level 2, the speed that he is displaying is as fast as that of a level 2 upper tier. The expression of sarcasm and mockery on Chen Feng's face froze and was replaced by an expression of shock. How is it possible? Don't tell me you brought an antidote with you. Chen Feng gasped with astonishment, but she immediately returned to her senses. She changed to a different poisonous substance every time. How was it possible for her opponent to have known which poison she would use beforehand and then prepare an antidote for it? What answered her was a pair of vast, deep and starry eyes that seemed to shine forever like the stars in the sky. When Su Yu observed her match with Jing Tao, he understood her trick. To counter the unusual and enigmatic poisonous substance, the key was to remember the spots that Chen Feng had stepped on before. When attacking, as long as one did not step on the spots that Chen Feng had stepped on before, he would not be poisoned. Moreover, there was a limit to how much poisonous substance the bottom of the feet could carry. Hence, the poisonous gas was only effective within a small radius. Although Chen Feng's steps were fast and messy, which made them difficult to remember, within the space where he experienced a faster time flow, by relying on his space-time manipulation, it was easy for him to remember the spots that Chen Feng already stepped on. Lastly, using cloud shadow to move and avoid those areas, it was easy to get close to Chen Feng. Universal stroke, shouted Su Yu. A punch and a kick, staggered like a shadow, maneuvered between one another and struck Chen Feng's chest at the same time. The poisonous mist that covered her body was spreading, causing a space free of poison to appear. If Su Yu managed to find a space free of poison, that would be his opportunity to strike. Chen Feng's expression changed, and she immediately used her arms to defend herself. When the punch landed, Chen Feng immediately felt its pain, and her arms went numb. Her mind was full of hatred, and she only wanted to counterattack. However, a kick followed straight away after the punch, and a cracking sound was heard from Chen Feng's arms. Chen Feng's mind was in a state of panic. If her arms were broken, there would be a higher chance of her losing. However, before she had time to react, a punch came again. The punches and kicks were continuous, airtight and had no openings. This time around, Chen Feng's arms were completely broken. Chen Feng screamed loudly in pain. Her scream was so loud it resonated within the entire arena. However, it was not over yet. The final kick, reverse kick. Chen Feng could not hold it in anymore. She spat out a pool of blood, and just like a rock that was sent flying by a kick, she collapsed on the floor with her mouth full of blood and fainted on the spot. As the audience gazed upon the results of the fight, they breathed in a mouthful of cold air. Chen Feng's arms, which she used to guard her chest, were caved in downwards, with a hideous bone spur that was colored in blood and had penetrated the skin. It was a compound fracture. Unless there was an elixir to restore the connection between the bone and the internal blood channel, her arms would be crippled. The arena became quiet for a short while. Hiss, what a frightening fist and leg cultivation technique. It was fierce, violent and airtight. Who is he? To be able to defeat Chen Feng, he should not be someone without a title. When the referee called for him just now, I believe he was called Su Yu. However, I have never heard of that person before. Ah! Su Yu. Is he the Su Yu who got dumped by Jiang Xueqing, one of the 3 prettiest ladies in the training institute? Wait, that's him. What I last heard was that his abilities were average, and he was unable to keep his love by his side. Hence, he changed his target to the woman of other men. But now, why is he? For him to be able to inflict serious damage on Chen Feng, then among the silver students, he must be one of the top 100 students who were aiming to be number 1. No matter how one looked at it, it was impossible for him to be described as someone with average abilities. After all, there were more than 10,000 silver students in the training institute. As the audience looked at the miserable Chen Feng, their hearts started to brighten up. Although they were secretly frightened by Su Yu's ruthlessness, their hearts were filled with happiness at the same time. As a girl, Chen Feng was evil and ruthless. It seemed that she did not expect to meet with failure and get her arms crippled at the same time. There were only a few words to be said to her, and that was, "Serves you right." However, when the audience remembered the Silver King, they felt worried for Su Yu. The Silver King. Chen Feng's biological brother. Su Yu might be done for. The silver assessment was 8 days away, and it was bound to have battles. The Silver King had the authority to issue anyone a challenge. When the time came, how would Su Yu fight against the number 1 silver student, the Silver King? The referee stared at Su Yu profoundly and suddenly declared, "Silver student, Su Yu, since this is your first battle, I will overlook your actions. Please do not go too far in the future." Crippling Chen Feng could be both a big and small matter. The referee detested Chen Feng for her cruelty and ruthlessness, hence he deliberately looked the other way for Su Yu. The color of Chen Feng's student number plate instantly became a lot dimmer and turned a silvery gray color. As for Su Yu's student number plate, it became a brighter silvery gray color. He was only a little bit away from silvery white. Why do I have so much martial art energy all of a sudden? Su Yu was different. In the other battles, the victors did not get as much martial art energy as him. The referee revealed a rare smile. If the challenger wins the match, he will only get 25% of the martial art energy. However, if the challenger loses the match, he will lose half of his martial art energy to the challenged. As Chen Feng has challenged you, she is automatically considered the challenger. Since she lost the match, she must give you half of her energy. Su Yu was delighted. He was able to get so much martial art energy from this one match, saving him the trouble of participating in more battles. Meanwhile, at someone's turf outside the arena, Jiang Xueqing was unable to hold back the surprise she had in her eyes. She suspected her eyes were playing tricks on her. Was the silhouette of the guy standing upright in the arena really Su Yu? The Su Yu of the past had abilities that were average and was unable to go beyond level 1 peak even after training for a long time. Moreover, he might also be eliminated this year during the assessment. However, the Su Yu of the present had not only achieved level 2, he also fought against and defeated Chen Feng, a very strong silver student who was of a higher tier than him and was distinguished for her cruelty and ruthlessness. Seeing this Su Yu, Jiang Xueqing felt great distress in her heart. She had no idea why, but she was unwilling to see Su Yu become stronger. It's just Chen Feng. I could easily defeat her with one finger. Su Yu winning against her is nothing incredible. Standing beside Jiang Xueqing was the handsome and elegant Qin Feng, who was shaking his head with disdain. The unsettled feeling in Jiang Xueqing's heart started to go away. Qing.er, don't worry. I have spent a huge sum of money to buy a few spirit elixirs. I guarantee that you would be able to make a breakthrough to level 3 in a very short amount of time. During the silver assessment, you will be amazing. Her graceful and pretty eyes were extraordinarily splendid, and she was over the moon. As she looked at Su Yu again, Jiang Xueqing's eyes turned cold. She shook her head lightly and said secretly, the dragon and the snake cannot exist with one another. Su Yu, we are not fated to be in the same world. My choice is definitely not wrong. The dragon and the snake cannot exist. You, Su Yu, would forever be unworthy of me, Jiang Xueqing. The two of them left. Qin Feng turned his head by accident. When he saw the silhouette of Su Yu, his eyes immediately turned cold and gloomy. As he brought Jiang Xueqing around, he coincidentally passed by the arena in order to let Jiang Xueqing witness a miserable Su Yu, who had been disfigured with her own eyes so that she would completely give up on him. However, what they witnessed was instead a scene of Su Yu so amazing that for a split second, Jiang Xueqing's heart was moved. This Su Yu has grown too fast. The silver assessment will no longer be able to eliminate him. Seems like I have to think of some other ways to get him expelled. Oh, that's right, Chen Feng's brother is the Silver King. If I could get him to work for me, it will be enough to cripple Su Yu in the duel 8 days from now. A cold laughter flashed through the eyes of Qin Feng. That Silver King Chen Tiannan is an extremely vicious man who knows how to cover up his mistakes. He is very powerful, more powerful than many of the gold students. If anyone offended him, even if they did not do anything, the offender would still be unable to escape from his adversity. Chapter 7. 100 Feet Piercing. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Translator. Nyo.bo Studio Editor. Nyo.bo Studio. Su Yu became famous after he won his first match against Chen Feng. The news had spread among the martial arts training institute in the blink of an eye. Among the silver students, a ruthless figure had appeared and crippled the poisonous widow. Oh, Brother Su has returned. Please take a seat, little brother will serve you tea. When Su Yu returned to the dormitory, Wu Song became a lackey, ready to be at Su Yu's service. He poured Su Yu a cup of tea, continuously complimenting him. Su Yu could tell that Wu Song's neck was dripping with cold sweat. Su Yu's victory against Chen Feng had instilled complete fear in Wu Song. Su Yu's abilities had increased and he was too lazy to deal with the spineless Wu Song, who bullied the weak and feared the strong. Get out. Stop acting in front of me. Not only was Wu Song not angry, he was overjoyed that things were not as bad as he expected. Understood, little brother will not bother Brother Su again. As Wu Song exited, he wiped off his sweat and his face was full of happiness. PFF, luckily Su Yu isn't a person to hold a grudge. Otherwise, with his ruthlessness and ability that crippled Chen Feng, I might not even get to sleep in the corridor anymore. Su Yu sat quietly for a while and was deep in thought. I have managed to fight my way up to the top 100 silver students, effectively freeing myself from the predicament of being eliminated in the assessment. However, since Qin Feng is watching me closely, I can't even take it easy. Su Yu was grinding his teeth. He did not have any intention of winning back the feelings of the practical Jiang Xueqing. However, Qin Feng was unwilling to let the matter rest and had tried multiple ways to put him in a difficult situation. This grudge of his, he would one day return to Qin Feng twofold. As such, he must frantically strengthen his cultivation base. It was for his self-protection, as well as to take revenge of what had happened today. Qin Feng, just you wait. Su Yu clenched his fists. Not only had Qin Feng stolen Su Yu's girlfriend, he also wanted Su Yu's life. If Su Yu did not have his revenge, he would forever be a good for nothing. However, Qin Feng's abilities or his family background, both were powerful, and Su Yu needed to work very hard to strengthen his own abilities. I, Su Yu, am persistent. At this coming silver assessment, I will put on a dazzling performance. Su Yu had been deep in thought for a long time. He took a deep breath and set an impressive target for himself. This decision was somewhat ambitious. However, even if he had to put his life on the line, he was determined to do it. Time and tide wait for no man. Qin Feng realized that Su Yu had been improving drastically, and he would not sit back and give Su Yu enough time to train. Su Yu's only chance against Qin Feng was to fulfill all his potential like his life depended on it, and work very hard to strengthen his own abilities so that he could achieve a new level of martial arts before the next predicament befell him. At the same time, after he had made a name for himself and become a promising talent, he would be valued and protected by the students. This was better than staying as a silver student who was of little significance to the training institute. As a silver student, the training institute would not be concerned whether he was dead or crippled. Wu Song, for the next 8 days, I will be going out. If there are any challengers, ye shall accept them on my behalf. Su Yu had prepared his food, stepped out the door and headed for the training institute's weapon pavilion. In order to practice the secret book of 100 steps piercing arrow, he needed arrows and a bow. The weapon pavilion was a place built by the training institute to provide weapons for students to train. However, it was similar to the depository of Buddhist scriptures. Every student was entitled to pick one weapon once every year. If students wanted to have a second weapon, they would need to pay 2 taels of silver. Su Yu had never chosen a weapon before. Since the first weapon was free, he was able to save some money. In the training institute, each silver student would receive 1 tael of silver every month to pay for their daily expenses. Hence, they could only save a few copper coins and were unable to pay for anything else. When he entered the weapon pavilion, it was full of people scattered around everywhere. Su Yu took a quick look around the weapon pavilion and found that there were 4 kinds of mainstream weapons: knife, sword, gun and rod. Besides the weapon pavilion having a great number of these weapons, there were also many types of them. There were so many mainstream weapons that Su Yu had to walk into the deepest part of the pavilion before finding a few big bows that were impaired and had traces of dust on them. He did not know whether to or laugh or to cry. Su Yu weighed the bows and chose a lightweight bow that had an elastic bowstring and was easy to pull. His body was not very strong. Hence, a bow with a tight bowstring did not suit him. The power of the bow and arrow was dependent on many things. First, the quality of the bow, its material, flexibility, strength and toughness. Second, the bowman's arm strength to determine the range and the speed of the arrow, and finally, the bowman's eyesight. If a bowman possessed very strong and powerful arms, it was no use if he couldn't hit his target. On the other hand, another bowman might have weak arms and his arrow could only travel slowly. However, as long as the arrow hit its target, it would be counted as being more powerful than the previous bowman who shot many arrows and yet missed all his targets. Su Yu's arms were not that strong, but his eyesight was first class. As such, with him, the power of the bow might not be weaker than that of a very muscular man. Suddenly, Su Yu heard a sound which pierced through the silence. When he turned his head to take a look, he found a graceful and beautiful white-shirt lady standing in the empty and spacious weapon pavilion square practicing archery. That square was given to the students who chose bows as their weapon to test the power of their bow. Behind the lady there was a big fellow with a rough face. He was holding a quiver and teaching her archery skills with a smile on his face. "Ah, Miss Xia, you are naturally gifted, your archery skills are extraordinary." As your instructor, I have nothing more to teach you. The big fellow was an archery teacher. Suyu had a few impressions of this person. The Martial Arts Training Institute had lessons that taught students how to wield a weapon. Suyu had seen this instructor teaching some students archery from afar. However, he used to have a very bad temper. He would frequently beat and scold students who were stupid, which was completely different from how polite he was now. Moreover, this teacher's surname was Jiang, and he was brothers with Jiang Zhisher. Suyu recalled the day when Jiang Zhisher wanted to look good in front of Duke Qin. Without any concern for the pain of his frail body, Jiang Zhisher grabbed him and brought him over to Duke Qin. As Suyu recalled this scene, he felt unhappy. Suyu stopped looking at them and started to recall the secret book of 100 feet piercing arrow on the spot. Rather than saying this was a cultivation technique, it was better to say that this was knowledge of archery. As such, it was easy to comprehend. Although an hour had passed, in the time turbulence that Suyu was in, he had been recalling the content of the secret book of 100 feet piercing arrow for 10 hours and he was then able to recite it by heart. He looked for a few ordinary iron arrows and went to the shooting area, eager to try out his skills. He took a deep breath and calmed down. He squatted down a little, and was as firm as a rock. This was to reduce the recoil when shooting an arrow, so that the accuracy of the arrow could be increased. One hand was holding the bow, while the other hand placed the arrow on the bowstring. He concentrated all his strength onto both of his arms and held his breath while his eyes focused on the target that was 100 meters away. The essence of the secret book of 100 feet piercing arrow was that when shooting an arrow, the practitioner must become one with nature, concentrate deeply and channel all their energy on the iron arrow. This process required the practitioner to harmonize the inner strength within his body repeatedly, so that he could achieve a state of tranquility. At this stage, the practitioner would then be able to concentrate all his energy into the arrow and fire it off without being affected by any forms of interference from the surroundings. When Suyu released his fingers, the iron arrow made a whizzing sound which pierced through the silence and turned into a fragmentary shadow, striking the target that was 100 meters away. However, Suyu was not satisfied with the outcome. The arrow had landed on the edge of the target, and it was quite a distance away from the bull's eye. His actions attracted the attention of the white-shirt lady who was engrossed in practicing her archery skills, as well as Master Jiang who was teaching her archery. Master Jiang raised his black eyebrows. Where did this kid with no manners come from? What do you think you are trying to do when we are practicing archery? Suyu had nothing to say. It was obvious the lady was very prestigious. In order to win her favor, Master Jiang did not tolerate anyone who disturbed their practice. However, the target where Suyu shot his arrow was on the other side of the weapon pavilion square, and it would not affect the lady in any way. What am I trying to do? I am trying to practice my archery skills. If there were rules that students cannot practice their archery skills here, then I would leave this place immediately. Suyu was calm and collected. He leisurely took up another arrow and started to aim at the target again. Master Jiang put down the quiver that he was holding and quickly headed towards Suyu with an angry look on his face. Master Jiang, you need not do anything. Let's continue, said the lady softly. Her voice was soft and delicate, making it pleasant to listen to. As she was talking, her bright eyes shot a glance at Suyu's posture. She felt that it was strange. Is this your first time practicing archery? As Suyu was engrossed in practicing archery, he lightly nodded his head and answered her unintentionally without lifting up his head. Yes, this is my first time. The lady smiled and nodded her head. Not bad, you were able to hit the 100-meter target on your first try. Master Jiang looked Suyu up and down, shook his head and laughed. His posture is no good. He probably only learned the fundamentals and then came here to practice. I guess it's luck that the arrow hit the target just now. Regarding Master Jiang's words, the lady decided not to comment. As for Suyu, he did not hear anything. He remembered the important aspects of the secret book of 100 feet piercing arrow. However, he lacked the mastery of all those aspects. Hence, he needed to continue practicing to master those aspects. The second arrow landed on the edge of the target like before, but it was slightly closer to the bull's eye. What? The lady was stunned. With Su Yu's posture, was it really by luck that he actually managed to hit the 100-meter target twice? Each time after, the arrow landed closer to the bull's eye. The lady's face was full of astonishment. The first and second time could be by luck, but if the arrows landed on the target 5 times, how could it still be luck? Moreover, Su Yu's posture became more refined and he started to have a style. Master Zhang's rough and black eyebrows started to twitch, and he stared at Su Yu as he continued his practice. Su Yu was wrapped up in his practice. However, from the 5th arrow onwards, Su Yu found it difficult to get even closer to the heart of the target. Any arrows after that landed away from the red heart of the target. At first, he became better as he practiced. His skills indeed improved, but for some reason, he became unable to progress. There was always a distance between the landed arrow and the bull's eye. Instead, there were 2 times that his mind was unsteady and was not focused on the accuracy. However, this confusion actually made him hit the bull's eye. BVEC the lady signed secretly as she thought that she had met an archery genius. Master Jiang was surprised. He laughed a laughter that was secretly filled with contempt. Seems like he is another lecher. He must have known that Miss Xia liked good archery skills and often came here to practice. As such, he secretly practiced a bit by himself and pretended to be someone new to archery to attract Miss Xia's attention. There had already been at least 1 or 2 of this kind of people. The lady's eyes, that were as bright as water, lightly shot a glance at Su Yu. She could not help but feel a thread of detest towards Su Yu and went away in a flash. I shall take my leave now, my mind feels unsettled. The white Dutch shirt lady lost interest in him and took light and graceful steps. As she passed by Su Yu, she shot a glance at his bow by accident. She was startled and her face revealed an expression of astonishment. Let me see your bow. The lady's face had a strange expression. When Master Jiang looked in their direction, his face revealed a strange expression as well. Su Yu initially turned his head to glance. However, he realized that the person standing beside him was a very beautiful lady. She looked innocent and gave off the impression that she was indifferent to fame and gain, as though she was a female deity who had no faults. When she walked in this world, she was calm and noble. Any filthy beings that appeared in front of her would melt away. A celestial beauty was what Su Yu could think of to describe her. She was a girl who did not belong with the human population. Looking at her, she was about 14 or 15 years old, similar to Su Yu. She had a pair of bright and snowy eyes which were so clear that they touched the heart of the people. It was as if within the extremely cold weather, a snow lotus, which was rare and difficult to find, had bloomed with a purity that did not belong to the human population. When faced with such a pure and fine pair of eyes that were free of any impurity, Su Yu's mind felt respect for her. She could be seen from afar and one should not be disrespectful to her. Su Yu did not hide the fact that he became absent-minded for a split second. With his deep and bright eyes, which were magnanimous and natural, he gave an apologetic smile. Sorry, please forgive me for being so impolite. This is my bow. The celestial beauty gave off an expression that she was indifferent to fame or gain. She did not mind what Su Yu had done, as she had encountered similar situations, and smiled. The generosity of Su Yu left her with a good impression. In the split second that Su Yu was stunned by her beauty, she could tell that it was the first time he had seen her. He was not a lecher who had an ulterior motive to attract her attention. As the celestial beauty took the bow, her snowy eyes started to look at it. Her smooth and soft hands were like jade and they lightly caressed the bow. Within a short while, her eyes were filled with surprise. Master Jiang went towards them and also looked at the bow carefully. He was also stunned. It can't be. Chapter 8. Benefiting from the dispute of others. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Translator. Nyo-i.bo Studio Editor. Nyo-i.bo Studio. Mr. When you chose this bow just now, no one told you that this is a defective product that had been discarded, the celestial beauty asked in a surprising tone. Those worn-out bows on the table were defective goods. The quality of the material, bowstring, accuracy of the bow and so on, had serious problems and were cast aside, ready to be disposed of. However, it was very strange that the young man managed to use this bow and hit the 100 target 5 consecutive times. With a thread of suspicion, the celestial beauty herself used the bow and shot an arrow. In the end, even with her good archery skills, she still missed the bull's eye. Moreover, the arrow did not even hit the target at all. Su Yu's mind emitted a feeling of shock. Which scoundrel placed the defective goods over there? Try shooting with my bow. The white-shirted lady removed a huge, fragrant, scarlet bow that was hanging on her shoulder. The quality of the bow was commendable. When looked at from afar, the bow not only looked like raging flames, it also looked like a red jade. As Su Yu held the bow in his palms, he could feel a lukewarm sensation that came from the bow itself as well as the residual warmth from the celestial beauty's jade-like hands. This is a good bow. Even though he did not know how to appreciate bows, his instinct told him that the bow he held was good. He looked forward to using the bow. When he tried to pull the bowstring, he realized that the bow did not require a lot of strength and was suitable for a non-muscular man like him or a woman. With great concentration, Su Yu focused all the energy in his body to his arms. He revolved his crystalline pupils to their maximum and could see the 100-meter bull's-eye clearly. Whiz, a bright, clear and sharp noise pierced through the silence of the weapon pavilion square. Boom! The iron arrow had hit the bull's eye. Moreover, it had hit the most center part of the target, which had the size of an eyeball. The power of the 100 feet piercing arrow was just so much. The celestial beauty revealed an expression which showed that Su Yu had met her expectations and she was amazed. Indeed, it was the problem with the bow. You are really amazing. In just half an hour, you transformed from nothing into an expert in 100 feet piercing arrow. Master Jiang was surprised. However, he still felt that Su Yu was a lecher. He thought that Su Yu was already highly skilled in archery and he deliberately pretended to be a newbie so that he could earn the favor of Miss Xia. However, he could not deny the fact Su Yu was an archery genius, as he possessed the technique of 100 feet piercing arrow at a young age of 14 or 15. Su Yu heaved a sigh of relief as he had managed to execute 100 feet piercing arrow. Thank you, Fairy. I will take my leave now. Su Yu needed to speed up his training. As he left, he returned the bow back to the celestial being. Mr. Su, if you feel that this bow suits you, you can have it. In the weapon pavilion, there are no bows that you can choose from as new bows are still being made. The celestial beauty was generous and she laughed quietly, suggesting that she was indifferent to fame or gain. Su Yu was startled. Even though they had never met before, the celestial beauty gave him her precious bow. It was obvious that this bow did not belong to the weapon pavilion, it was the celestial beauty's personal bow. Su Yu muttered to himself, took over the bow from the celestial beauty and thanked her sincerely. Since I borrowed your bow today, I will return it back to you one day. May I know where you stay? When the time comes, I will return your bow back to you. It's fine. This bow belongs to you now. The celestial beauty laughed, indifferent to fame and gain, and took her leave swiftly, leaving behind a delicate fragrance. As Master Jiang could not hold back his laughter anymore. He sneered, "Kid, when something good comes your way, just accept it. There have been many lectures, yet this is the first time that Miss Xia had given her personal bow away as a present. However, you were still not satisfied and even tried to pay her a visit at her house. Don't waste your time, she is not someone that a person of your caliber can make friends with." Su Yu laughed indifferently. He was too lazy to explain the misunderstanding that Master Jiang had. No matter if it was Jiang Zhishe or Master Jiang, he hated this pair of brothers. Suyu carried the bow and went to the mountain that he always trained in. However, he did not stop at the usual spot that he always trained at, he continued going deeper into the mountain. The Martial Arts Training Institute was built along the extension of the Twilight Mountains. By passing through the mountain behind the Training Institute, one could enter Twilight Mountains. There were many wild beasts living there. There might even be demonic beasts. The so-called demonic beasts referred to the wild beasts in the mountain which had devoured the universe's miracle mineral plant. Under the influence of medicine, they started to develop intelligence and also become a more superior type of wild beasts. These demonic beasts were extremely dangerous, as not only do they have high intelligence, they were also gifted with impressive abilities. Suyu entered the Twilight Mountains for two reasons. Firstly, he wanted to increase his abilities by experiencing actual combat. Secondly, he wanted to hunt for wild and demonic beasts so that he could earn silver taels to buy spirit elixirs which could strengthen his body and raise his inner strength. The period before the practitioner could make a breakthrough to level 3 of the martial path was considered as the period to refine one's body, and the practitioner needed to strengthen his body to a certain extent. The spirit elixir was commonly used to refine one's body. As it was made with many kinds of rare ingredients, it was very expensive. A single low grade of spirit elixir cost 100 taels of silver. The Training Institute gave 1 tael of silver every month. By subtracting the cost of daily expenses, there would only be a few copper coins left. As a child that came from a poor family, Suyu had absolutely no way of coming into contact with a spirit elixir. As for those who had financial support from their families, even 10,000 taels of silver was nothing to them. As for gold students, they would get 100 taels of silver every month. Even though they sit at home quietly and do nothing, they could still get spirit elixirs to allow them to easily strengthen their physique as long as they asked for it. As for me, I still need to go into the deep and old mountainous forest to fight with the wild and monster beasts. Suyu recalled that in his previous life, it was an age where one had to depend on his father's wealth and prestige to be successful. He did not expect this world to be the same. I don't believe that if I put in 10 times more effort than the rest of you, I won't be able to catch up. Suyu's heart had a feeling of dissatisfaction. After half a day, Suyu entered the Twilight Mountains. Suyu could hear a faint noise. Suyu immediately took precautions and revolved his crystalline pupils to their maximum to take a look around his surroundings. Suddenly, about 10 feet away from him, at a space below a few fallen leaves that was hidden from view, there was a snake that had a color similar to the leaves and it was quietly gliding towards the direction of Suyu. The snake had dark yellow eyes, a triangular head and was scarlet in color. It was the 7-step poisonous snake that was famous across the world. Ah! Suyu's silhouette was like a wind, and the shadow of his leg was like a whip. Russell, the 7-step poisonous snake was like a rope that was sent flying and it fainted after hitting the trunk of a tree. Suyu leaped towards the snake and took out a small knife which he had prepared. With the small knife, he carefully removed the snake's gallbladder and soaked it inside a wine bag. He then swiftly removed the snake's skin and its poisonous fangs, bundling it meticulously. Lastly, he removed the snake's meat and kept it properly. The snake's gallbladder, skin and poisonous fangs could be sold for around 10 copper coins. As for the snake's meat, it would serve as Suyu's food. 100 copper coins can be exchanged for a tael of silver. Suyu was lucky, the moment he entered the mountain, he obtained 10 copper. For the next 5 days, Suyu leaped through the trees. Just like Cloud Shadow, his movement was agile and natural. It was also as though a duckweed was floating gracefully in the sky, capturing the attention of those who caught a glimpse of it. He revolved his pupils to their maximum, searching for wild beasts that he could kill and exchange for money as he moved. When the night came, Suyu hid himself in a cave along a small lake. He started a fire outside the cave, deterring wild beasts from approaching it. 2 7-step poisonous snakes, 5 wild rabbits, 2 wild chickens, 3 local chickens, 2 pangolins, 1 wild wolf, 2 wild boars and 1 big golden eagle. Suyu counted his harvest, and roughly estimated that it could earn him about 1,200 copper coins, which is around 12 taels of silver. Sure enough, experience counts. I was able to earn a year's worth of money that the school would have given me for support within 5 days. Suyu was satisfied with his returns over the past 5 days. In addition, he was most satisfied with the changes in his body. The shortcut to success is to put one's skills to practice. These words are indeed authentic. He did not feel any fatigue for the past 5 days. Within his realm, he had unknowingly achieved level 2 upper tier of the martial path, which was just a few steps away from level 2 peak. At the same time, he had also achieved stage 3 lower class in universal stroke. His universal stroke used to consist of 4 layers of attack with both his fists and legs. However, as of now, it had increased to 8 layers of attack. When universal stroke was at stage 3 upper class, it would be able to do 16 layers of attack. When it was at stage 3 peak top class, it would be able to do unlimited layers of attack, meaning that the punches and kicks could go on continuously forever until the enemy became unable to sustain himself. There was also good progress for Cloud Shadow. Initially, Suyu's Cloud Shadow was at stage 1 lower class. However, he had then successfully achieved the realm of stage 1 upper class, which had a speed comparable to someone who was at level 2 peak. Suyu had also achieved the highest degree of perfection for 100 feet piercing arrow. He was able to hit anything within 100 feet, his archery skills were exquisite and comparable to an archery expert. Suyu's progress was not only thanks to the abilities of his eyes, it was also thanks to the excellent quality of the scarlet bow, which made the bow easy and convenient to use. I am indebted to the celestial beauty. When I return this bow to her one day, I will definitely repay her. As Suyu held the scarlet bow, which gave off a warm sensation, his heart was filled with gratitude for the celestial being. Crash! A distinct sound of trees crashing could be heard. It seemed as though a big monster had caused the mountain forest to shake. At the same time, a faint sound of humans could be heard. Suyu's expression changed. With this kind of phenomenon, was someone fighting with a very strong wild beast. A ray of light shone through Suyu's eyes. He then extinguished his fire and disappeared into the darkness. For Suyu, darkness was no different from daytime with the help of his pupils. He activated Cloud Shadow and started to leap between trees. Not only did he look like he had the shadow of the white clouds, he also looked as though he was a duckweed floating in the sky, strange and shrouded in mysteries. After 3 minutes, Suyu landed on a big tree and hid himself within the thick branches where he could not be seen. When he looked down, he was in awe. Below him, there was a large scarlet python that was so huge and sturdy that Suyu gasped. The python's body was as big as a water bucket and it appeared much stronger and tougher than Suyu. Not only that, it also had a head so big that it could completely swallow Suyu. What truly surprised Suyu was the fact that the huge python was covered in flames. Moreover, at the areas that the python had been to before, almost all the trees around those areas had been burnt. It is a demonic beast. Suyu's pupils shrunk. If it were a normal python, why would its body be covered in flames? Only demonic beasts would show this kind of phenomenon. Although this snake was a Category 1 demonic beast, it had extremely frightening abilities. From observation, its abilities seemed semi-matured and it was in a realm that was comparable to a human who had achieved level 3 upper tier. It was a demonic beast that Suyu had no hope of defeating. The good thing was that below Suyu, there were 3 people who were fighting against the huge scarlet python. Among the 3 people, the purple-shirt young lady was at the realm of level 3 lower tier, while the petite young lady wearing a light yellow dress and the green-shirt young man was at level 2 peak. The 3 of them worked together and had managed to trap the huge scarlet python. Hurry up. Once we catch this fire dragon, we would be rich. This fire dragon can be sold for no less than 1,200 taels of silver. The petite young lady wearing a light yellow dress was shouting loudly and throwing needles at the huge scarlet python from a safe distance. At the same time, she was also scared and excited. 1,200 taels of silver. Suyu felt a rush of excitement. That was 10 times the amount of money that he had earned for the past 5 days. However, Suyu was speechless as the three people were in a dire situation. The purple-shirt young lady and the young bodyguard looked pale as they had expanded almost all their energy. On the other hand, the huge scarlet python, which the small child referred to as fire dragon, was very strong and powerful. These three people had used most of their energy to trap the snake. This was not a good idea, as they might lose their lives. After all, the fire dragon was in a realm of level 3 upper tier. As for the three people, the purple-shirt young lady was at level 3 lower tier, while the young man and the petite young lady wearing a light yellow dress was only at level 2 peak. Russell the fire dragon was intelligent, it seemed to be able to tell that two of them were physically exhausted. Its eyes were filled with craftiness. After avoiding the combined attack of the three people, it raised its giant tail to a great height. Just like a whip, the fire dragon swung its tail around it, surrounding violently. The strength of the giant tail was so powerful it was as though it could topple the mountains and overturn the seas. Upon witnessing this, Suyu felt that he was suffocating. As the purple-shirt young lady and the young man had expanded all their energy, they were unable to avoid the attack in time. At the same time, they spit out a mouthful of blood and were sent flying backwards, hitting a tree and fainting on the spot. The fire dragon was cunning. Rather than taking that opportunity to swallow the two persons who had fainted, it opened its big and bloody mouth and threw itself at the petite young lady who was still standing, preventing her from escaping. The petite young lady's expression of excitement froze. At the same time, she was so scared that she turned her body and ran, screaming at the top of her lungs. "Ah! Xiaozi, please save me quickly, it bit me." However, both the purple-shirt young lady and the young bodyguard had fainted. Chapter 9. Saving people but inviting trouble. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Translator. Nyo.bo Studio Editor. Nyo.bo Studio. The fire dragon made a beeline for the petite young lady. Sensing a crisis approaching her, in the midst of panic trying to keep the snake away from her, she subconsciously took a silvery white-colored ball out from her sleeve. Bang! A noise as loud as a thunderbolt could be heard. On top of the tree, Suyu's eardrums were ringing. In addition, his inner strength was quivering and he almost fell off the tree. Immediately after that, a great amount of energy exploded, causing his surroundings to shake violently. Hiss! The fire dragon was completely enveloped by the silvery white ball's explosion. At the same time, it gave off a mournful cry. Half of its head was blown off and the remaining half was covered in blood. 7 inches away from the head, a big piece of the snake's scales had come off, revealing its flesh. The intense pain the snake felt had caused it to become more ferocious. It writhed its body crazily and dashed towards the petite young lady. It opened its mouth wide and was about to devour a delicate and lovely small sheep. Suyu secretly shook his head. The power of the petite young lady's silvery white ball was frightening. It was definitely a very expensive life-saving treasure. Under normal circumstances, the explosive power of the ball might even be able to kill someone of level 3 peak of the martial arts. However, the petite young lady was too panicked. 7 inches away from the snake's head was the snake's heart. If she had aimed for that spot just now, the snake would be dead. Seeing that the situation was dire, Suyu took out his scarlet bow, revolved his pupils to their maximum and aimed at the vulnerable spot. There was an injury there that due to the snake's scales peeling off. Aiming at it, Suyu shot an arrow there abruptly. Hiss! The arrow had hit the target. However, it did not penetrate the heart as the snake's flesh was too thick. Even though the arrow had hit the spot, it was still a small distance from the snake's heart. The fire dragon gave another mourning cry. As it endured the pain, it lifted up its head angrily and looked at the human who hid at the top of the tree and shot it. "What are you looking at? Evil demon." Su Yu's heart felt cold as he had no way to defend himself against a demonic beast, which was at level 3 peak. Without any hesitation, Su Yu shot another arrow. This arrow was very accurate and it landed on the tip of the feather arrow that was stuck in the spot. The two arrows were joined like a string of pearls. Immediately, the feather arrow went another 3 inches into the snake's meat and pierced the heart of the snake deeply. The fire dragon groaned. It opened up its mouth and spit out a mouthful of a black poisonous liquid. Bits and pieces of the snake's fangs were mixed in the poisonous liquid. Su Yu's expression changed and he hurriedly moved his body behind the tree's trunk. Thud! He clearly felt something penetrating the tree's trunk behind his back with sudden force. When he looked back, he saw that the fire dragon was on the floor writhing in pain and it was gradually nearing its death. He only leaped towards the snake after it had completely stopped moving. As for the petite young lady, she seemed to be knocked unconscious from the impact of the explosion. Su Yu heaved a sigh of relief and without hesitation he removed the fire dragon's gallbladder, fangs and skin which were worth the most money. After having done this, Su Yu looked at the knife he was holding in amazement. The fire dragon's skin was much harder than expected. He was rejoicing in happiness. Luckily for him, the silvery white colored ball that the petite young lady used had blasted off the snake's scales at the 7-inch spot, revealing the snake's flesh. If not for that, his arrow alone would be unable to pierce through the thick and sturdy snakeskin. When Su Yu got up and was about to leave, he heard a faint groan coming from behind him. When he looked back, he found that the petite young lady's face was very pale. Her forehead was full of sweat and she was breathing so heavily that her chest was moving up and down continuously. This is not good. She has been poisoned. As Su Yu did a check on her, he found that a piece of the snake's fang, which was covered in the black poisonous liquid, had pierced through her clothes and went into her chest. Before the fire dragon died, it had spit out a big mouthful of poisonous liquid and fangs as a counterattack. The petite young lady had been injured by the fangs, causing her to be poisoned. Without hesitation, Su Yu undid the young lady's clothes. When he examined her, he found that at the right side of her chest, a small piece of fang had pierced through her clothes and skin into her flesh, mixing the black liquid with her blood and contaminating her wound. At the area near the wound, the flesh had started to turn dark brown, signaling that the poison had started to spread within her body. Once the toxin entered her heart, even a supernatural entity would be unable to save her. In such a critical situation, saving the injured person is more important. Su Yu's hands moved as fast as lightning, with his index and middle fingers meticulously removing the piece of fang that penetrated her flesh. Fortunately, the wound where the piece of poisonous fang was is big. Hence, it does not require me to cut open her skin, otherwise there would be a long-lasting scar at that spot. As Su Yu analyzed her wound quickly, he secretly nodded to himself. After which, he squatted down and cleaned off the blood on the top of the wound. He then opened up his mouth and started to suck out the blood which had been contaminated by the poison. As the unconscious young lady was being rescued, she seemed as though she felt the pain and her body was shaking lightly. Su Yu's mind was clear. He sucked out a mouthful of poisonous blood with force and before the poison could enter the blood vessels of his oral cavity, he quickly spit it out. After which, he lowered his head and started to suck the blood out from the wound again. Only after the 6th mouthful of blood, when the color was bright red, did Su Yu stop sucking her blood. At that moment, Su Yu felt that his mouth was a bit numb, as a small amount of poison had entered his blood vessels. However, this was all worth it as the beautiful lady's breathing had stabilized and she was only in a state of unconsciousness, with her life no longer in danger. Su Yu squatted down, covered the beautiful lady with her clothes and left immediately. He felt that by using this method to save the girl, instead of gaining her gratitude, there was an 8 or 9 in 10 chance that his actions would be misunderstood, which might even put his life in danger. After all, that purple-shirt woman was at level 3 lower tier. Moreover, he was in a deserted area. With the beautiful lady's orders, the purple-shirt lady could easily serve as a witness against him. What are you doing? When Su Yu was about to leave, that young bodyguard stood up unsteadily and unexpectedly, spotting a stranger moving about sneakily. At the same time, the fire dragon that they were fighting was stripped of most of its valuable parts. The young bodyguard was furious. Which thief has stolen our war gains? When he was unconscious, he could faintly hear a thunderous noise. In his mind, he knew that the young princess had used her trump card to kill the fire dragon. However, he did not expect that upon waking up, he would find the young princess unconscious and the most valuable parts of the fire dragon stolen. Su Yu did not turn back. He remained vigilant and made use of the opportunity to tear a piece of cloth to cover his face. After which, he left immediately without hesitation. He did not expect the small amount of poison in his body to take effect, causing his body to become less agile and made him unable to use shadow cloud smoothly. Where are you going? Making use of this opportunity, the young man at level 2 peak started to chase him. Su Yu turned back and said in a cold manner, "Humph. I was the one who saved all of you. You had better check the state of your partners." The young bodyguard with boiling with rage. "Thief! How dare you? You injured my master and stole our prey without saying anything, yet your mouth is still full of lies. Considering that you are at level 2 upper tier of the martial path, how is it possible for you to kill the fire dragon? You are definitely someone who injures others and steals their prey. Take that. Ferocious Tiger Fist." The young bodyguard jumped into the sky, and just like a ferocious tiger descending from a mountain, threw himself towards Su Yu. Ferocious Tiger Fist was a very powerful medium-level cultivation technique. Compared to Su Yu's universal stroke, it was a level higher. Su Yu was enraged. One does not get thanked for his kindness. Universal stroke, Su Yu's body became agile. He continuously threw punches and kicks in unity at the young bodyguard. A punch and a kick, staggered together like a shadow, maneuvered between one another and landed on the chest of his opponent at the same time. Having been hit by the punch and kick at the same time, the young bodyguard mourned in pain, and his imposing manner, like a ferocious tiger descending from the mountain, disappeared instantly. However, before he could react, another punch landed on the exact same spot. The young bodyguard was both startled and angry. He positioned both his hands in front of his chest. When his opponent stopped his attack for even a moment, he would use that opportunity to counterattack. However, his opponent's staggered punches and kicks continued on, one punch and one kick, landing on the same spot every time. The punches and kicks continued until the last attack, when Su Yu streaked his leg across the air like a fragmentary shadow and the kick landed on both of the arms of the bodyguard fiercely. The young man could no longer sustain himself. Both his arms were hurting severely, and his body was sent flying backwards about 5 meters, causing his eyes to be filled with astonishment. His opponent was at a mere level 2 upper tier, yet still managed to defeat him. That strange mixed combination of fist and leg cultivation technique was definitely a basic level cultivation technique, yet it had the power to suppress him. The reason Su Yu was able to defeat him was largely attributed to the fact that the young man had been through a tough battle and had used most up of his energy. Combined with the fact that he had just woken up, he was unable to display his true powers. After sending the bodyguard flying with a kick, Su Yu immediately used Cloud Shadow. It was as though he had the shadow of the white clouds and was like a duckweed floating along the river and sea, capturing the attention of those who caught a glimpse of him. He disappeared into the trees. Su Yu had to leave as the purple-shirt young lady with the greatest abilities had woken up. Li Minghai, what happened? The purple-shirt young lady covered her dizzy head, and stood up unsteadily. She had only seen the shadow of a man who sent Li Minghai flying and then escaped hurriedly. With an ugly expression, he exaggerated the situation and explained it to the young lady. The purple-shirted young lady was shocked. However, she was not concerned about the fire dragon. Instead, she was more concerned about the young princess. She went towards the young princess and examined her. When she confirmed that the young princess's life was not in danger, she heaved a sigh of relief. However, as she was meticulous, she discovered that the young princess's clothes were a bit untidy and the bloodstain on the young princess's chest was a sight. Lastly, there were a few mouthfuls of dark red blood as well as a piece of the poisonous snake's fang beside the young princess. The young lady seemed like she had thought of something and her face turned pale. She said in a deep voice, "Li Minghai, you are to leave now." When he left, the young lady removed the princess's clothes. After which, she saw the wound caused by the poisonous fang as well as a trace of dark colored skin, traces of being poisoned. However, the blood contaminated with poison had been removed, and the young princess's life was not in danger. Immediately, as she stared at the markings which suggested that someone sucked out the young princess's blood to save her, her mind started to put together the puzzle pieces. She then instantly understood what happened to the young princess. With signs of anger, the young lady looked in his direction and said coldly, "Senior Qin, why didn't you stop him? The young princess's body is priceless. How can she accept the fact that her body had been touched by a man? How can she retain her good reputation? If Duke Xianyu found out about this, he would be as furious as a thunderstorm." Rustle with a sound of the clothes fluttering against the wind, a wizened old man with a dull expression appeared out of thin air. From the very beginning, this wizened old man had been standing in another tree. However, Suyu did not realize it. This old man's level of abilities was so frightening that no words could describe them. He was a martial arts expert that was secretly protecting the young princess. No matter how hard Duke Xianyu was on his daughter, he would not take risks and allow his daughter, whose abilities were weak, to go into the mountain without any insurance. As such, Senior Qin was a martial arts expert who was secretly sent to protect her, and he would only take action when the young princess was in a life-or-death situation. Chapter 10. Duke Xianyu. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Translator. Nyo.bo Studio Editor. Nyo.bo Studio. Having heard what the young lady said, Senior Qin had a dull face and laughed lightly. The young man was saving the young princess and not harming her. According to the agreement, I can only protect her when she is in danger, otherwise I would not interfere. Anyways, even if I were to take action instead, I could only use that indecent method to suck out the snake's poison. Young lady, would you have preferred this old man use this mouth of his to touch the young princess's priceless body? Senior Qin laughed lightly as usual. The young lady was left speechless. She then bit her teeth. Then, do you remember what that young man looked like? Senior Qin lightly shook his head. No, I do not. That kid's movement was very agile. My angle was not good. From my perspective, I could only see his back view and his silhouette after he disguised himself. The young lady was furious. She could not help but feel worried. We are dead now. Duke Xianyu will definitely be as angry as a thunderstorm. Returning to the outside world, at a town in the Xianyu prefecture, a shadow of light flashed through the people's eyes. Suyu covered his face with a veil and went to a dark alley. In the Martial Arts Training Institute, he heard that in the alley, there were black merchants who bought materials that came from unknown origins through illegal sellers. The fire snake's materials were very valuable and could fetch a very good price. However, he understood that if he sold these materials openly, he would get himself into trouble. As the young lady was at level 3 lower tier of the martial path, he could not reveal himself. Old man, do you want materials? Deep inside the alley, when Suyu saw an old man holding a toad-shaped smoking pipe, an idea flashed through his mind. The old man twitched his eyelids and said, "You have found the wrong person. I will sell my illegal materials to you at a cheap price. Su Yu's mouth wore a smile. He understood that the old man was being cautious, causing him to be blunt. Su Yu then took out a piece of the fire dragon's poisonous fangs. The old man's eyes shone brightly and he spoke with a soft and amazed voice. Demonic beast materials. He was astonished. The young man in front of him was only at level 2, how was it possible for him to kill a level 3 demonic beast? As he thought about the illegal materials, he understood that they came from a questionable origin. Follow me. The old man opened a small, inconspicuous door and brought Su Yu into a secret compound. As Su Yu could tell that this old man had been buying illegal materials for a very long time, he was not afraid of the old man plotting something against him. Is that really the fire dragon? As the old man with the smoking pipe looked at the 20 meters long gigantic snake skin, his eyes filled with excitement. The old man with the smoking pipe quoted Su Yu a price after calculating for a while. For the gallbladder, I will give you 50 taels of silver, for the poisonous fangs, I will give you 100 taels of silver, for this length of snake skin, I will give you 500 taels of silver, the total will be 650 taels of silver. Su Yu laughed coldly. Old man, on this bright and sunny day, you have a black and evil heart, are you not scared that you would be struck by lightning on this sunny day? You are only willing to give me 650 taels of silver for materials that are worth 1,200 taels. If that is the case, then I will look for other people. Within the Xianyu prefecture, there are many others that are willing to buy illegal materials and not just you alone. The old man with the smoking pipe was ashamed. Su Yu was a guy that knew the ropes. 900 taels of silver. Deal. The old man quoted a black market price. Su Yu thought to himself, from 1,200 taels of silver, the price had dropped by 25% and it was not worth it. However, these were the prices in a black market. Deal. However, you have to give me a bit of the snake skin as I want to make armor out of it. Su Yu's eyes were filled with wisdom as he tried to bargain with the old man. The head of the old man shook his head as though it was a rattle-drum. No way. That would be too much of a loss for me. Su Yu smiled and said, how about if I bought a few spirit elixirs from you? This way, you would not take any losses. BVEC the spirit elixirs sold by black merchant were 10% cheaper than the market price. For a low-grade spirit elixir, it would cost 100 taels of silver in the normal market. However, it would only cost 90 taels of silver here. It was a good that one could not find easily. Silver students came here regularly to buy the cheaper spirit elixirs. The eyes of the old man with the smoking pipe shone brightly. How many spirit elixirs do you want? 3 low-grade and 1 middle-grade. Su Yu said. For a middle-grade spirit elixir, it would cost 500 taels of silver normally. But here, it would only cost him 450 taels of silver. Combined with the 4 low-grade spirit elixirs, the total cost will be just 900 taels of silver. Haha. Deal. The old man took out 2 jade bottles, filled with low-grade and middle-grade spirit elixirs respectively. After confirming that the spirit elixirs were real, Su Yu removed a length of the snake skin and left. Right before he left, the eyes of the old man shone brightly and gave Su Yu a token. Haha, kid, old man likes people like you who are straightforward. Take this token, go to the town's biggest Donglin artisan shop and look for Master Zhang Zhe, he will make you the perfect armor. Take it as an additional reward from this old man. When you have first-class goods, please sell it to me again in the future. The old man smiled and closed the door. Su Yu looked around his surroundings. When he reached the end of the street, he threw the token away. After which, he removed his disguise and disappeared. After 2 hours, the old man was happily making an inventory of the components of the fire dragon. Bang! His door was kicked open. 20 murderous-looking black-armored soldiers who had all achieved the frightening realm of level 5 dashed into the compound. They stood at both sides of the doors respectively. as though they were welcoming a person with very high status. On the chest of the black-armored soldiers, there was a totem of a hawk carved on each one of them. Only people belonging to the imperial family possessed this totem, it was their symbol. Moreover, in the Xianyu prefecture, there was only one person authorized to bestow the totem onto the armors of the soldiers, Duke Xianyu. He was the most powerful person in the Xianyu prefecture. After the respectful welcome of the black-armored soldiers, a handsome and dignified man with a gloomy expression entered the compound with his hands clasped behind his back. He saw the scarlet snakeskin on the floor. Is this it? A middle-aged man tilted his head and looked at the purple-shirted young lady behind him. Beside the young lady, a beautiful lady wearing a light yellow dress had hazy eyes full of tears to the extent that they were red and swollen. She kept on sobbing, as though she had experienced a great grievance. Having heard what the middle-aged man had said, the beautiful lady took the lead and looked. At the same time, she started to cry again, angry and embarrassed. This is it. As expected, that scum had brought the materials to the black market to sell them. Who sold this to you? Where is the guy? The middle-aged man gave off a powerful and frightening vibe, intimidating the old man with the smoking pipe and causing his face to turn pale. The old man's knees turned soft. His eyes were filled with fear and shock. He got on his knees and groveled repeatedly, "Duke, please forgive me. A commoner like me didn't know that these materials' origins were connected to your people. I deserve to die, I deserve to die." The middle-aged man clasped his hands behind his back and stood up. His face was calm, but his eyes were burning with anger. Answer me. Who sold this to you? Where is the guy? The old man said, "It was a young man, he put on a disguise, hence I could not get a good look." Suddenly, the trembling old man remembered something. As though he had found his last hope, he said, "Oh yes, I gave him a token." Perhaps, he had gone to Donglin artisan shop to make his armor. The old man was quick-witted, he knew that he was smart to give Suyu that token. Investigate the Donglin artisan shop now. Bring this old man away and continue to interrogate him. Duke Xianyu's eyes were burning with extreme anger. When his daughter was unconscious, she was taken advantage of. As her father, how could he not be angry? He understood that the guy who saved his daughter had good intentions. However, to his daughter, this was a matter of chastity and he needed to capture the man to give his daughter an explanation. The black-armored soldiers marched mightily towards the Donglin artisan shop and did a thorough investigation. "Duke, no one has come here before." One of his soldiers gave him a report. In no time, another soldier was holding a token. "Duke, this token was found at the corner of an alley. The guy must have been very cautious and threw this token away." Duke Xianyu's face turned very sour and slammed the table angrily. What a cunning kid. Firstly, he brought the materials to the black market and sold them. Even so, he did not forget to disguise himself. Next, he was crafty enough to throw away the token and not reveal himself at the Donglin artisan shop, preventing anyone from finding out who he was when they followed the clues. This guy was very cunning, he hid himself profoundly which made himself untraceable. As of now, there were only two pieces of information regarding him. Firstly, his fist and leg techniques were good. Secondly, from the prediction of the fire dragon's dead body, this guy's archery skills were top-notch and he had the ability and accuracy to hit the tip of another arrow. Go and find out who the young geniuses are who possessed excellent archery skills. Duke Xianyu stared at a distance with anger, he would not give up until the matter had been resolved. The beautiful lady was the young princess of the Xianyu prefecture. Her eyes were red and swollen, and she fiercely bit her own silver teeth. I must catch that pervert. That thief, I will bite him to death with one bite. He actually dared to do that to me. Boo-hoo. I don't want to live anymore. At a tea house close to Donglin artisan shop, Suyu had changed into a clean and new robe that was completely different from the one he wore when he was in the mountain range. Even if Li Minghai were standing in front of him, he would still be unable to recognize Suyu. He leaned against a railing, quietly drinking his tea and secretly waiting for people to start looking for him. He wanted to know who the two ladies and the man were. In addition, he also wanted to know whether they had the abilities to easily find out about the old man with the smoking pipe and track him all the way to Donglin Artisan Shop. From this, he could secretly find out whether he had offended someone with frightening power so that he would not need to worry about future consequences. However, he witnessed a scene which made him gasp. Duke Xinyu. Suyu's body started to tremble in fear, and his forehead was completely covered with cold sweat. That two ladies and the man were actually related to Duke Xinyu. To be able to alarm Duke Xinyu and him to come out personally to settle the matter, the beautiful lady who was crying had to be someone who had very close relations to Duke Xinyu. There was even a possibility that she was the princess of the Xinyu prefecture. Thinking that the person he touched was actually the daughter of Duke Xinyu, Suyu had thoughts of suicide. Suyu regretted his decision to save the beautiful lady. Be it in his past life or in his current life, anyone who saved people out of kindness might not end up with a good ending. I am done with this. It will be difficult for them to find out my identity. Hopefully they treat it as a misunderstanding. In the future, I will live in seclusion and the chances of my identity being exposed would be low. Suyu sighed and returned to the training institute. However, he did not return to his dormitory. Instead, he entered the training institute's training room. Entry to the training room was permanently free, and to a poor student like Suyu, opportunities like this were rare. However, the training room was split into different classes as well, lower class and upper class. At the upper class training room, there was a better environment and a spiritual pool. By training in the spiritual pool, the practitioner's inner strength and body would become even stronger. Sadly, there were only 10 of these rooms. Only the rumored 10 demon students as well as privileged students were allowed to use them. For poor students like Suyu, they could only gaze at them and lament at their own insignificance. Creak, it's you. What are you training? A voice that was pleasant to the ear and sounded as though it was indifferent to fame and gain could be heard. Suyu tilted his head and cupped his hands in gratitude. I have seen you before, fairy. In his mind, Suyu felt strange. Could it be that the celestial beauty was also a student of the training institute? In addition, she came out from the upper class training room. Could she be one of the 10 demons? Or was she one of the highly privileged students?